Board meeting. It is March 26, 2026. We will establish a quorum for today's meeting. My name is Dolores Trujillo, and I was appointed by Governor Newsom to represent the board in the direct care provider role, and I am the current president of the board. Vice President Neelu Patel.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Neelu Patel, and I'm the Vice President of the board, and I was appointed by Governor Newsom in the advanced practice role.
Thank you, Neelu. Board Member Patricia Nguyen.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Tricia Nguyen. I'm a public member appointed by Governor Newsom.
Thank you, Tricia. Board Member Jovita Dominguez.
Good morning, Jovita Dominguez, appointed by Governor Newsom in the education and licensing.
Thank you, Jovita. Board Member David Lawler.
Good morning, David Lawler, appointed by Governor Newsom in a public member role.
Thanks, David. Board Member Vicki Granowitz.
Vicki Granowitz, appointed by the President of the Senate in the public role.
Thanks, Vicki. Board Member Allison Cormack.
Good morning. My name is Allison Cormack. I'm a member of the public on this board. I was appointed by the Speaker of the Assembly.
And Board Member Katie Nair.
Good morning, everyone. Katie Nair, appointed by Governor Newsom, Nursing Administrator member.
Thank you. Our Board Executive Officer, Loretta Melby.
Thank you. I'm Loretta Melby, or Lori. I'm the board's executive officer appointed by the board.
Thank you. Our Board Counsel, Reza Pejuhesh.
Good morning. Reza Pejuhesh, BRN Legal Counsel.
Thank you. So our quorum has been established for this meeting. BRN moderator, please take us to the format of a telephone call, not a television call. I need coffee.
A teleconference call. Good morning, Dolores. Good morning. This is the BRN moderator. I will be moderating the meeting. To facilitate public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature, now known as Slido. When the board reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, the question and answer feature will be turned on, and members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by inserting the phrase, "I would like to make a comment," in the question box, which is typically in the lower right of your screen. I will then call on the individual and send the request to unmute their microphone. The individual should be able to unmute and make their comments. I will then proceed to the next member of the public who has a comment. I will also query our on-site location here in BRN HQ for comments as well. Please note that the question and answer feature is being used only as a means for members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. When your turn comes, you will be prompted to unmute. If your question can be answered, the board will respond accordingly. When making your comment, speak about anything you believe is important for the members to know. Please remember, board members cannot address any item not on the agenda, items not on the agenda at that moment, items that you would like to add to a future meeting, or items that will be discussed later on the agenda will be discussed at their correct times during the meeting. I will provide a brief reminder of this approach at the start of each public comment item. Finally, when board members or BRN staff are not speaking, I would like to remind them to mute their microphone. If I detect background noise during the meeting as a result of unmuted microphones, I will mute your microphone automatically.
Thank you. BRN moderator, please open us up for public comment for items not on the agenda and for future agendas.
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment."
Board moderator, we have a public comment here in Sacramento.
Thank you. And we have one on the WebEx. So 1 second, please. Anonymous would like to make a comment. 1 second, please. Anonymous, on your screen, if you are on a computer, there is a box probably behind any windows that you have open that says unmute me.
Oh.
Anonymous, if you're not, it's behind any window you have opened up, so you might have to minimize all your windows.
Board moderator, as you are working on the technical assistance there, I just want to give everybody on the WebEx and in person a heads up. We will be reordering the agenda officially after this public comment, but we're going to move 7.1 up to immediately following the meeting minutes. We know that that's a regulatory package comment response, and so the people that presented comments may want to come forward, and sorry, I'll address that at 7.2, but we'll do official reordering as soon as the meeting minutes are done.
Anonymous, if you cannot unmute, go ahead and type in your question. While you're doing that, can we go ahead and do the one in person, please?
Yes, we can.
Good morning, colleagues. I'm Dr. Robin Nelson. I'm from Unitech College, but I'm here as a member of the planning committee for the California Association of Colleges of Nursing. We had our spring meeting in the end of February. And I just want to say thank you to Executive Officer Melby and the nursing education consultants for attending. That's a valuable gift to the programs. This CACN is made up of the baccalaureate and higher degree programs in nursing, and the program directors and deans are there. And it was great to have our NECs and our executive officer there. So I just want to say thank you. Hopefully we're on your budget for next year. So thank you.
You heard that, Matt.
Thank you for your comment. And we're still waiting. Oh, here we go. Would you like me to read it, or would somebody like to read it?
I'm opening up. You can go ahead and read it.
Okay. Anonymous states, let's see. Hello, I attended ICHS based in Florida, and my question is concerning the holds being put on applications due to a review of the curriculum. There's been a lack of response by evaluators on the timeline for this. Are there any challenges that were made that we are unaware of?
There's a general message on our website that we'd like to point anybody too that's coming from a school out of Florida. A year or so back, there was a Operation Nightingale that came from Florida, where there was a multitude of fraudulent transcripts being issued by several colleges and universities in that area. And so all of Florida was being reviewed on a heightened review pattern, and that continues to this date as Operation Nightingale has continued to be in effect. I will take a look at ICHS and see what we can find out. If the commenter wants to send me an email directly at loretta.melby@dca.ca.gov, we'll look into that for her.
Oh, sorry. Yes, there's been hundreds of students that have successfully tested recently and in the past, but yes, I will email. Thank you.
Please, thank you. If hundreds of students have been tested, have been approved for testing, then the school's probably been reviewed. Each school's reviewed on an individual basis, so we'll take a look at it.
Thank you. I'm looking. Sorry. Board President Trujillo, there are no other public requests for comments on the WebEx. Do we have any more public requests for comments there in person in BRNHQ?
No, it doesn't appear that we have any requests for comments here.
All right. Thank you. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, thank you.
So we need to reorder the agenda. Following the meeting.
At this time, we will reorder the agenda for 7.2 following the approval for minutes. Are there any objections to reordering the agenda?
Okay.
Thank you. So at this time, item 4.0, this is the review and possible action. Approval of prior meeting minutes for November 19th through 20th, 2025. Board Member Allison Cormack.
When the chair is ready, I'm happy to move approval of the minutes with the modification on page 22. I did vote for the sunset report. It marks me as abstaining, which I believe is just a carryover from the prior vote. So I'm happy to move approval of the minutes.
We will correct that. Any other questions from board members? No? BRN moderator, can you please take us to public comment?
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Jeffrey would like to make a comment. 1 second, please.
Jeffrey.
Hi, sorry, thank you. My question was from the prior overall opening session, so I don't know if it's relevant right now. I could also hold it for later for point 7.3.
Yeah, that's okay. Go ahead. This is for public comment for items not on the agenda.
Oh, understood. Thank you so much. Yes, I just have a quick question. So thank you to the board for rolling out the 104 NP application, which I think will be discussed at later in the call. It's item 7.3. As a 103 NP myself, I just was curious if there's any update on eligibility for actually trying to access the application, because although 3 years have not yet passed for my 104 NP 103 NP status, I'm coming up to achieving the 4,600 hour requirement or eligibility possibility. So I was just wondering if there's any update on whether there might be some progress on that front. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We are working on updating that. It's a technical fix, but you can go ahead and give us an email as well and reach out to, again, me, and I'll direct you to loretta.melby@dca.ca.gov, and then I'll direct that to licensing to take a look at.
Thank you.
So were there any public comments on the meeting minutes and that approval? It will be, David.
There are no other public requests for comments on the WebEx. Do we have any public requests for comments there in person in BRN HQ?
No, we don't appear to have any requests for public comment here.
Thank you. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. Okay, we have a motion made by Board Member Cormack. We need a second.
For the record, David Lawler seconds Member Cormack's motion.
Thank you. So we'll take it to a board vote. Dolores Trujillo votes yes. Neelu Patel?
Yes.
Board Member Allison Cormack?
Cormack, yes.
Board Member David Lawler?
Lawler, yes.
Board Member Vicki Granowitz?
Granowitz, yes.
Board Member Tricia Nguyen?
Nguyen, yes.
Board Member Katie Nair?
Nair, yes.
All right. Motion is carried.
Oh, Dominguez, yes.
Oh, yes. Sorry, Board Member Jovita Dominguez. All right. The motion carries. Moving on in the agenda, we're going to take item 7.0. This is the report of the Nursing Practice Committee. 7.2, sorry.
Yes.
Here we go. Yeah. Okay, item 7.2.
I could do that. Yeah. Good morning. Okay. This is Neely Patel. I'll be carrying out agenda item 7.2 and discussion and possible action regarding public comments received on the adopted regulatory text to modify California Code of Regulations CCR Title 16, Section 1444.5, and the recommended guidelines for disciplinary orders and conditions of probation, and further proposed revisions to regulatory text. And I'll hand it over to Marissa. Thank you, Marissa.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Marissa Clark, Chief of Legislative Affairs. So this rulemaking package obviously has come before you all before, but it was initiated because of statutory changes over the last several years that has changed the scope of practice for some of our advanced practice RNs, allowing them to work without physician supervision and outside of your standard group healthcare setting. So with those changes, we realized there needed to be some updates within our disciplinary guidelines, specifically the probation conditions, the one around supervision. We wanted to make sure that our disciplinary guidelines address the scenario where you have an EPRN who is working independently. If they are placed on probation and are required to have a supervision, there's a vehicle to do that, because the way the disciplinary guidelines were written before, that wasn't taken into account, and we didn't want an unintended consequence of the EPRN having to cease practice altogether. So we put forward some language, we worked with the advisory committees and brought it forward to you all, and then put together a rulemaking package. And that rulemaking package was submitted to the Office of Administrative Law, and it was noticed for a 45-day public comment period that ran from January 30th through March 17th. So it closed just last week. We did not receive any requests for public hearing, but we did receive several written comments. All of those written comments and our proposed responses to the comments are included in the meeting materials for your review. We do want to point out that there was one provision that we got a handful of comments on, and that was around the language where we were prohibiting a potential supervisor from having a current or prior financial, personal, business, or professional relationship. And I think initially we put that in there kind of out of an abundance of caution to make sure there was no conflict of interest and they could provide objective and unbiased oversight. We had several commenters say that that professional in particular was a bit overly restrictive. You know, it could lead to the pool being too far narrowed. It could lead to situations where if you're working under the same organization as a colleague who wanted to offer to provide that supervision, that would preclude them. And we thought that was fair. We thought that was very good feedback. And so we are proposing to modify the text to remove the professional indicator, so they wouldn't be prohibited from having a prior or current professional relationship. So if the modified text is also including in the meeting materials, and if you all choose to approve the modified text and take that recommendations, as well as any other kind of amendments, just process note that we do have to put it out for another 15-day public comment period. That's just part of the Administrative Procedure Act requirements. Anytime we change language, we need to give the public a chance to comment on the updated language. So it's a truncated period, but it will go out again. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the comments we received, the modified text, or our proposed responses.
Board Member Patricia Nguyen.
Thank you very much. I just want to tell you, I appreciate you taking the public comment to heart, and I think it seems like a really reasonable amendment, and I'm very supportive of it. So even though it does require another 15-day public comment, I think it's worth it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tricia. Any other questions or comments from board member Neela Patel?
Just a brief comment to say that I'm delighted to see this finally here after decades of wanting to see this come to action, especially as the advanced practice rep and for advanced practice providers. This has been debilitating. So I'm happy to see this.
Thank you, Neela. Any other questions or comments from board members? No? All right. At this time, we'll make a motion. You want to make?
I'll make a motion to approve as written. Neela Patel.
We actually have to read the motion. That's
sure.
Because it's a procedural process, we have to have that exactly.
Okay. I'll make a motion regarding the public comment received on the adopted regulatory text to modify California Code of Regulations, CCR Title 16, Section 1444.5, and the recommended guidelines for disciplinary orders and conditions of probation, and further proposed revisions to regulatory text.
And then right here on 7.2, possible motion.
Okay, and
that.
Thank you. I can't read from where I am, but, okay. This up here?
Yeah, the entire thing.
Okay. The possible motion I'll make is approve and do not approve, or
You have to choose one of those.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Either
Okay.
approve, or
Approve.
not approve or defer. So you want to
Excuse me.
approve the proposed response and then approve the proposed modified.
Got it. So I'll make a motion to approve on the proposed responses to the public comments and with any edits deemed necessary, and approve the proposed modified text for a 15-day public comment period. Direct staff to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking process. Authorize the executive officer to make any technical and substantive changes to the proposed regulations and adopt and enclose modified text either as described in the proposed modified text or with any potential amendments, if no relevant adverse comments are received within a modified text comment period. Thank you for your patience on this.
Dolores Trujillo will
And just-
second.
Okay.
Sorry, just a clarification, the modification to the text that we're directing is to the removal of the term professional because it's limiting.
So moved.
All right, we have a first and a second on the floor. BRN moderator, can you open this up for public comment?
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Board President Trujillo, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. Do we have any public requests for comments there in BRNHQ?
It doesn't appear that we have public comment here in headquarters.
I'm sorry, Vice President Patel. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. Thank you. We'll go and take a roll call vote. Neil Patel, yes. President Trujillo?
Dolores Trujillo votes yes.
Member Cormack?
Cormack, yes.
Member Lawler?
Lawler, yes.
Member Granowitz?
Granowitz, yes.
Member Dominguez?
Dominguez, yes.
Member Nguyen?
Win, yes.
Member Inaya?
Ayer, yes.
That's a unanimous. The motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go back to item 5.0. This is the report of the Administrative Committee. 5.1, this is the Executive Officer report from the Administrative Committee. Loretta Melby.
Thank you. So agenda item 5.1 is the report of the executive officer. And you'll notice on the agenda item summary, the various areas that most of the report is located in. So the strategic plan update will come on 5.2. The budget update will be shared at 5.3. Regulatory updates were just completed at 7.2. Advisory committee updates are on 7.3. The education licensing is done agenda item 8.0 to 8.5. Enforcement is agenda items 9.0 to 9.3. And the legislative committee is day 2, agenda item 4. Lower on the agenda item summary, you will see the BRN vacancy rates and information as of March 1st. And then I will cover right now the meetings that I participated in, as well as the social media stats. So I held in, this was a little lengthier time between board meetings. I do board meeting to board meeting reports. Our last board meeting was held in November, and then we decided to adjust our calendar and do our every 3-month board meetings, with the first board meeting being in March today for this year. And so it's a 4-month reporting period instead of a 3-month. And so I met with several advisory committee subcommittees. We met with legislative staffers. We met with the Legislative Analyst Office, LAO. several lobbyists, several associations, including representatives of CNMA, CANP, CACNS, CANA, and CSA. And if I will go ahead, for those that don't know all of those, it's the California Nurse Midwife Association, the California Association of Nurse Practitioners, the California Association of Clinical Nurse Specialists, the California Association of Nurse Anesthesiologists, and the California Society on Anesthesiologists. We participated in the sunset and budget hearings. I met with Premier and Vault and Affinity, and those are vendors that are used to support our probation and our intervention participants. I've provided ongoing intervention evaluation committee education. We met with the DCA, Department of Consumer Affairs Task Force for med spa and IV therapy and hydration. I met with the University of California chiefs, various National Council State Boards of Nursing member meetings. I also met with the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education, the Board of Vocational Nursing and Psychiatric Technicians, along with the Department of Consumer Affairs. We tend to have a memorandum of understanding where we tend to work together on school approvals and such. So we try to get together on a pretty routine basis. We participated in the Hospice Fraud Task Force with the California Department of Public Health. There was a board president training we went to, as what was shared in earlier. I attended the California Association of College of Nurses in Palm Springs. I went to the National Council of State Boards of Nursing mid-year meeting in Phoenix with our board president. We met with budgets with DCA. We met with Alameda County Public Health on their public health nurse presentation. We met with the public commenter and the chief of license, Macaulay. We had a public commenter that came in several of our meetings discussing the continuing education issues. And so we had a meeting with him and worked on kind of satisfying those issues. I met with various schools, their nursing education consultants and their supervising nursing education consultants. I met with the Department of Investigations in their triage process with my investigations team, and then the Attorney General's office meetings with our enforcement team. I met with the Med Board, and we were doing mapping on their enforcement investigation process to see if there's anything that we can carry over and improve on our end. We did hold an all BRN staff meeting. DCA partnered with the pharmacy board, and they held a joint forum where we all kind of came together and talked about opioid prescribings and stuff that really informative around that, and I attended that. I also participated in a WICHE forum, and that is a forum talking about just various education on the Western side. Additionally, met with Cal HHS on a cross-agency health workforce training. So those are something that I attend on a routine basis and participate in. Met with the California Hospital Association's chief nursing officers, advisory group meetings, and then participated in the legislative roundtable with the Department of Consumer Affairs. So lots of meetings. Sorry, guys. It was 4 months instead of 3 months. So I tend to be very long-winded. I apologize for that. And then we'll move right into the social media stats. So since the last board meeting on Facebook, we had just over 10,000 at 10,144. We now have a current following of 10,352. On Instagram, the last board meeting, we had 1,398. Currently, we have 1,450. LinkedIn, we had 3,297. We now have 3,499. On X, we had 323. We now are at 326. And so that is the update on the social media. We do still have an active, actually a strategic plan goal now to really increase our social media and our outreach. And so we hope to see these numbers continue to grow. Any questions?
No. Thank you, Lori, for that executive officer report. You were busy. All right, moving on to item 5.2. This is information only, 2026 to 2030. All right. Feels like a Monday. At this time, BRN moderator, can you please open us up for public comment?
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Board President Trujillo, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. Do we have any in-person requests for comments there in BRN HQ?
No, it doesn't appear that we have any requests for comments here in HQ.
Thank you. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. Board Member Patricia Nguyen.
Thank you very much, Ms. Melby. Very interesting report. Just looking at the vacancy information, was that part of this report? Your executive officer's report?
Yes.
I was really impressed because I thought I remembered there were certain vacancy rates that were much higher than this. And I know it's very hard to hire into state service right now. And like I noticed the nursing educational consultants, I thought there were more vacancies. You have it down to one. What is making the difference in terms of just being able to recruit and fill some of our vacancies?
Macaulay. No, I'm joking. I'm sorry. She makes all the difference. So there has been a concerted effort to recruit NECs. We leave that filing open. It just constantly goes and goes and goes. There's a lot of word of mouth out there. So when we go to like CACN and COADN meetings, we're always saying, "Hey, come work with us. We're good people. Join us." It is a very long process to get a single NEC on. That vacancy that we just filled right now had been open for greater than 2 years. So even though it looks like we're making progress, it's not truly progress. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes to make that work. And in order to get to this hiring, I believe we interviewed and put forth hiring probably 3 NECs prior to being able to get this one to sign on. And when we get through, they're excited. They've done their first interview, they've done their second interview. Then we check all the references, they're list eligible, and then we contact them and they hear the salary and they back out. So this was a failed search 2 or 3 times before this one was actually filled. And that was just in this last year. And again, we're talking about this position had been vacant for greater than 2 years. So that's not counting how many failed searches it was for the last few years prior to that. So the numbers on the vacancy rate, again, it's kind of misleading. And I try to explain that in a very politically correct kind of manner. We had a position sweep that was part of a budget letter that came out that removed 19 vacancies from our entire position authority. So with that, those were not positions that we really didn't need. Those were positions that we needed, that we were routinely filling, that we utilize on a regular basis. But when that position sweep went through, they were current vacancies. So it looks like we have a great vacancy rate. The issue is now, and you guys will be reported out on that, is our budget change proposal. So we had a vacancy where that swept it last year, took 19 positions, but now we're going through a budget change proposal. I just attended the Senate and Assembly hearings for the budget to get 8 of those positions back. So it's a process that is very common within state service that is not, it doesn't liken it to a similar process within the private sector. And so the vacancy rates look good on paper, but that doesn't mean that our processes have all the support that they require.
Well, I just want to thank you for your hard work, and thanks, Macaulay. I mean, I know it's difficult, and I appreciate how much time and effort you put into it.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments from board members? No? All right, moving on to item 5.2. This is information only, 2026 to 2030 strategic plan and goal progression.
Okay, so I will cover this one. So this is our brand new goal progression. This is the first time you guys are seeing any updates on it. This came into effect just 3 months ago. And so you will not see highlights in yellow because that is our process when we add to it. So everything is not highlighted, but these are all brand new updates. And so on our completed activities under licensing goal 1, we did do some Breeze updates to our faculty approval process to allow for a more automated review and approval. And then we did implement the 104 nurse practitioner Breeze application. That was the public comment we heard. There are some issues with that application. We are working to address those. Continued on with that for streamlining the license application process, we did engage with stakeholders to address and resolve the issues related to the NP 104 application process. That public feedback was key. California Association of Nurse Practitioners reached out to us right away saying that there was some issues with the application, so we're able to address that and get started on working on that. The next one was to enhance communications. So thank you to Matthew Yates. He really did a large update on our website on the fingerprint information. It was streamlined and updated. And then we also added pre-licensure education requirements to provide clearer guidance for applicants that were attending non-California approved academic institutions. There's a federal regulation that requires any out-of-state school offering distance education to the various states that you have to state on your website whether or not you meet their licensing requirements. That seemed to have a little, maybe they had some problem understanding whether they met or not. So we wanted to provide additional guidance and clarity. So we did update our website to include that. Enforcement, with that, we did, they wanted to reduce case processing times. So we did submit a budget change proposal requesting 8 special investigator positions. And then I did present at the Budget and Fiscal Review Subcommittee 4 that took place the the Thursday after our sunset hearing. And then just Tuesday was the Assembly budget number 5, Assembly Subcommittee number 5 budget hearing, and we got put forth as a consent. And so that was very exciting. So it looks very promising. Fingers are still crossed until we hear officially. But I'm really hoping that that was heard and supported. Going down to the goal 2 on enforcement for increased outreach, we did post the probation FAQs on the board's website for public access. And then on the intervention program, you guys will notice on 3.1, when we're looking at enhanced communication, it does have that it started in August 2025, but it is ongoing, but we had to put at least a start date on there, where we implemented the executive officer training and open session of each intervention evaluation committee meeting to discuss program requirements and procedures. This seems to be going fairly well. Hoping that we're seeing some real positive outcomes from that. And then what we did complete was the education on the public comment for conditional recommendations. So that one is completed. So as we complete each topic, we will just start and list which topics were covered on this. So you guys can see this. We're currently going over kind of mental health only participants and then working on worksite monitoring. So those continued education will go until they're completed, and then we'll update there. On 3.2, there was weekly onboarding meetings with the new alternative to discipline contractor, and you guys know them as Premier, to review program expectations, reporting requirements, and operational workflows during the contractor's first year. We've now gone into the second year. It's continuing over, just really making sure that all of those changes continue to work and that we hear of any issues that come to light and address them first before they have to come to public comment for us to hear what's going on. The next one on 3.3 is identify and address barriers. And so we did do audits on several scenario-based cases, and we're kind of redirecting and providing education around that. 3.4, on the standardizing the onboarding process for nursing support groups and IECs, we did distribute a survey out to the nursing support group facilitators to collect feedback on the current process. And then access was granted to CMS, and that is a portal that is used and developed by Premier that our intervention evaluation committee members can now access and get participant data. We were having to do a very kind of manual hands-on process until they got that system up and out, and so now it's being utilized. Going all the way down to goal number 5 on education oversight. We did launch the academic collaboration forum to improve documentation and clarity on regulatory required clinical collaboration data. The Education Licensing Committee knows this form now fairly well, as we're using it in all enrollment, new campus, new program data. That is a form that is not incorporated into regulation. It is a helpful document that is used for organizing the data that is regulatory required. And so the schools can choose to use it or not to. If the schools choose not to use it, our NECs have been instructed to fill that form out using the data that was provided so that it's the same exact data in front of our board each time. Continuing on, going into item 5.5 on educational updates, we did put out the pre-licensure nursing program educator webpage. It was created and put forth, and this webpage covers all of the various access points that an nurse can take to become an educator. The reason we're highlighting this as well is we are the first board in the nation to have a license type that is specific for faculty. So we will be able to track growth and recession of nursing faculty across the state, and we will be able to provide regional data. And we are the first in the nation to do this. It's really an amazing data point to share out because we have been hearing that there is a faculty crisis. And because of that faculty crisis, enrollment numbers are directly related on that. And we are, again, the first state in the nation to have this license type to be able to track growth and recession and bring it out by region. Now, there is one hiccup to this that I would like to kind of share is in our last sunset hearing, there was a law that was added that said if the nursing programs are regionally accredited, they don't have to have BRN approval for faculty. So there may be some faculty that don't have this license type, so we may not have 100% data. That doesn't mean they can't do it. So it is no longer a school-based process. It is a licensee-based process. So if you're ARN and you want to become a faculty member, you can just go to your Breeze profile, apply to be a faculty member, and we can review you, and there does not require to be any school association. Very similar to the Commission on Teaching Credentialing that David is familiar with. And so you don't have to be hired by a school to get your teaching credential. You just have to be prepared to get a teaching credential, and you can apply for that license. And so we actually met with the California Commission on Teaching Credentialing to mirror as closely as possible their process to make this a professional avenue for our nurses. And so that web page is now up and running. It has clear delineation of what is required. It goes all the way through the assistant director to the director, which is fantastic. It's very similar as your vice principal and your principal kind of setup. And so looking forward to kind of sharing that and screaming that at the top of our lungs to the nation. I did let them know at NCSBN last week when we were there, and they were very excited to learn about that. We asked them to add that license type to nurses as well, which is the licensing reporting system used in the nation, and they will start conversations with me about that. We are also one of the only ones that have a public health nursing certificate as a license type 2, so we're asking that to be added to nurses as well. Going on to goal 6, participating in the 2026 sunset review process to secure legislative authority to the continuance of the board. several items there, reviewing the draft report, full board approval, submitting, developing and implementing training tools for me so I could accurately represent you guys. We did the mock hearing with DCA, and then ultimately participated with our board president in the sunset hearing that was held on March 10th. So far it looks good, but we are continuing the process through that. Yes.
So in the past, the sunset review hearings have been a little bit contentious, and it's because of stuff going on behind the scenes. Did you feel that this year?
No,
Good.
It was amazing. So if we look at the immediate preceding sunset hearing, when I first became the executive officer in 2000, that fall we started preparing for a sunset hearing. Then we went in front of that board and we participated in the first sunset hearing. Then we actually had, at a very rare case, a second sunset hearing in the same year. And so usually that's not what happens. We don't anticipate a second sunset hearing this year through this legislative process, although it's always a possibility. That is not the norm. So in that first one in 2021, we had 2 hearings, and they were all-day hearings, scheduled for all day, sorry. And then we ended up with a 1-year sunset and then had to go back in front of them, and then got a 4-year sunset. So this is a very different experience than what we've had experienced historically. We were one of 4 boards. We were the first one in. It seemed to be very collaborative and a lot of questions and answering that occurred. So fingers are crossed that it's a good, it continues to be a good experience.
Mm-hmm.
Going on to we're just kind of whizzing through this. 7.1, sorry. It's improving the customer service. And this just highlights again the updates to our website that were already covered. We'll go to 7.3, where we talk about how we submitted the BCP and then we presented at the various hearings around that. 8.1 is kind of a repeat again of just posting the probation FAQs to the board's website. And then we'll move on to 8.2, social media. And so that just covers the stats that I covered already, so I won't belabor that. We'll go into 8.3, where we updated the BRN website to include easy-to-read summaries on all bills passed in the previous legislative year. Thank you, Marissa, for that. And that is the end of the strategic plan goal update. It is lengthy. Sorry about all that, but we're just constantly moving and working and putting our efforts towards making this a good strategic plan. Any questions?
That was a impressive report. Thank you, Lori. Board Member Allison Cormack.
Thank you, Chair Trujillo. Lori, I don't think you are taking enough credit for your work and for what the staff has done. So thank you for glossing over it. But let me just take a moment to say that, don't think it would be an overstatement to say that there was a scandal in the BRN before you became the EO. And there was a great amount of repair work that needed to be done with the public and the representatives of the public, not only on this board, but in the legislature. And that repair work was done based on the work that you and the staff did within the organization. So it makes sense to me that the sunset reports were difficult, right, at that time, because appropriately the public wanted to know what was happening. And you and your staff have made that all happen. And over the course of 4 years we do not need to go through all the numbers. I'm sure you're all happy to hear me say that because I do love going through the numbers, but I've done that many times, I've made really significant achievements in various areas. And I don't just mean in licensing. I would also just point to, the fact that the concerns that we have had with the intervention program could have had different repercussions. But because of the way that you and the staff handled it and the way that we all engaged, and that includes participants and the NSGs, et cetera, we were able to work through collectively a difficult time. So I think you need to take a little bit more credit. And since you aren't, I wanted to offer that here in public to you. And I understand that it is the staff of hundreds who work here. So let's just take a moment to say how nice it is to have a straightforward sunset review, a straightforward strategic plan, but with deep appreciation from the public, most of whom has no idea, the effort that you've gone through.
Appreciate that. Thank you. But honestly, it comes down to the board staff. I cannot do that without them. And truly, externally, there was obviously, as you put it, kind of a difficult time that we had to go through, but understand that was internally felt probably 10 times more than public. And so the recovery that our entire staff has had to go through has been pretty amazing. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Lori. Board Member Neela Patel.
Just to add on to Member Cormack's comments, because I couldn't have said it better myself. As a member who had the luxury of viewing the sunset hearing from the luxury of my home, I was really, really impressed at how well President Trujillo and Executive Officer Melby presented themselves. Exemplary, knowledgeable, confident, and just handled it like bosses, I must say. It was a beautiful hearing. The legislators responded very well and were very supportive, and it was nice to see. So we appreciate your representation from the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you. But honestly, those three people sitting over on the side, Matt Yates, Marissa Clark, Macaulay Pisarins, they spent so many hours drilling me, prepping me, preparing me. Like, I can't even imagine. Like, they would critique the way that I responded, saying, okay, yeah, I know you know that. That's not how you say that. And then they would give me talking points, which was fantastic. And then truly the day before, they set up here. Matt pretended to be a senator or assembly member. He does that role very well. I'm not sure you guys understand that. And Dolores and I were at that table, and for the entire 8 hours the day before, Matt, Marissa, and Macaulay would present themselves as an assembly member or a senate member, and just went through questions that, again, brought in the expertise of Department of Consumer Affairs as well. They prepared list of questions and possible items that would come up, and they just collaboratively got us to that point. So we could not have walked in there without really them carrying us to that point. So truly the praise goes to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Board Member Vicki Granowitz.
That being said, and not to diminish it in any way, actually sitting there under that pressure of being at the table and having them throw questions at you, and I believe that the questions weren't the ones that I expected you to get, it was impressive. So just say thank you.
No, I'm joking. So, yes, thank you. Thank you. There you go.
Any other questions or comments from board members? No? All right, BRN moderator, can you please open us up for public comment?
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public. So yeah, they should type in the request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, I would like to make a comment. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, I would like to make a comment. Board President Trujillo, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. Do you have any in-person requests for comments there in BRN HQ?
No, it doesn't appear that we have any requests for comments here in HQ.
Thank you. Would you like me to close this window?
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this is 5.3, information and discussion only. This is a presentation by DCA Budget Office on Nursing Fund Coalition Condition.
Board Moderator Luke F. and Suzanne Balkes are both in the attendees. If you can elevate them, please. They're both in the attendees here. Okay, Luke, if you want to take over agenda item 5.3, the presentation from DCA Budget Office.
Okay, perfect. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. Good morning. My name is Luke Fitzgerald. I'm a budget analyst with the DCA Budget Office, and I'd like to thank the board and executive staff for allowing me a few minutes to present on agenda item 5.3, which is the board's expenditure and revenue projections and fund condition statement. First, I'm going to start with the board expenditures, which is on the first page of your materials. These projections are based on actual fiscal data through fiscal month 6. The report includes fiscal year 2024-2025 actual expenditures in green, as well as 2025-2026 budgeted and projected expenditures in blue and orange, which also includes a budget allocation breakdown. And over this 2-year period, costs are a little bit higher. If we scroll to the bottom, looking at the totals of the document, you'll see that the board had a beginning base budget of about $62.5 million and is projected to spend approximately $61.3 million. This creates a reversion to the board's fund, of approximately $1.2 million, or a percentage of 1.84%. The next document is going to be the board's revenue projections. This report includes receipts collected through January, and I'll actually go further into these projections as we transition to the last slide, which is going to be the board's fund condition statement. And as a quick reminder, we read this document from top to bottom and left to right. So the left column is going to be the board's prior year 2024-2025 actuals. It shows the board began 2024-25 with a beginning balance of just over $27.5 million. This column shows that the board is projected to collect $80 million in revenues, with $22.6 million from initial license fees, about $52 million from license renewals, and just over $5.4 million from the issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenue. And then below that, we'll see the loan repayment from the general fund of $30 million. The board expended $61.8 million, which includes $4 million in direct draws to the fund for statewide pro rata and pension payments. The board ended 2024-2025 with $75.8 million in reserve balance, or about 17 months in reserve. For the current year, 2025-2026, the board projects revenues of $81.5 million, with $23 million projected from initial license fees, $53.6 million from renewal fees, and $4.9 million from the issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenue. The board's 2025-2026 expenditures based on fiscal month 7 projections is approximately $53 million between authorized expenditures and direct draws to the fund, which leaves the board with a fund balance of $103.8 million, or 18.5 months in reserve. Budget year is based on the governor's budget, and budget year +1 is based on the revised. The budget office will continue to monitor the board's revenue and expenditures and report back to the board with monthly expenditure projections as we continue to close fiscal months in the current fiscal year. And then just a few final things to note on the board's fund condition statement. The fund condition statement is a snapshot in time. One of the main factors driving expenditure increases in future years is a result of personal services adjustments. These include general salary increases, as well as employee compensation and retirement rate adjustments. The budget office includes a conservative ongoing 3% increase to expenditures on the fund condition statement to account for these ongoing incremental adjustments. And then you'll also notice that revenue is projected steady in the out years. And then lastly, I'd like to note to the board that any future legislation or unanticipated events could result in the board need for additional resources, which could create cost pressure on the fund. Again, thank you for allowing me the time to present at today's meeting, and I'll now be happy to answer any questions.
Board Member Patricia Nguyen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fitzgerald. That was a great report, as always. I'm always fixated a little bit on the reserve fund. I'm just wondering if our fees are appropriate, because it does seem like that amount keeps growing. And I wonder, 18 months in reserve is a lot of money to have in reserve. And I'm a saver, so I love to save money, but I'm just wondering if we should be looking at that number. Thank you.
We are looking at our fees. We've made several adjustments to our fees. And so in our last strategic plan, we addressed several areas in fees. So initially when the executive team came in, we started looking at, so the first thing that we did is we addressed license verifications. We used to charge $100 for every license verification that would go out to any of the individual states to prove that they were licensed here in California. That is now part of nurses, so we no longer charge that fee. That was removed, and the public now only pays $20 to nurses for that to occur. Additionally, in our last sunset bill, we requested all of our fee floors to be removed. We were set prior to that at the statutory minimum for each one of our fees. So we were not in excess, we were at the statutory minimum. We went out and asked for each one of those fee floors to be removed. So now we have the ability to bring those down. Prior to reducing fees, though, we looked at what kind of processes we can streamline and what processes we can combine. And so one of the items that we did is the nurse practitioner furnishing application, which were two separate applications, became one. That additionally went over to the nurse midwife and the nurse midwife furnishing, they became one. There was a miss, and this was addressed in our sunset, that we forgot to carry that over to renewals. And so we have asked for that combination to occur so that they don't have to renew separately. So that is a $350 removal for each and every furnishing license and renewal. Additionally, we used to charge schools for every curricular change, a $2,500, I believe it was, fee. We no longer charge that. That was removed in the last sunset as well. We used to also charge for public health nurse renewals. We just removed that last year through a statutory legislative update. And so we no longer renew for the public health nurse. That is, once you obtain it, as long as your RN stays active, that stays active. So we've addressed that in several different ways for streamlining and combining. We do also have an active process right now, as we're going to go through and update 16 CCR 1417, which is our fee structure. That is on our regulatory planning, and we're going to go through and kind of highlight that down. I see that Matt is begging over there to speak, and he'll probably cover kind of our budget sweep and all that kind of stuff with the position, so he can go into that.
I'm not begging to speak, but I wanted to throw out there too, just remember during COVID, we received a massive increase in endorsement applications. That's revenue for the board. We do budgets based on past trends, right? So for 3 years, we're going to receive X amount of applications. We need X amount of people to do those applications. But COVID was a huge blip. We received a massive increase of applications, but we don't have historical data saying that's going to happen again. So we received a massive influx of revenue, but we're not going to tell the Department of Finance we need additional positions for this because we don't anticipate we're going to get all those endorsement applications going forward. So we want to be mindful of trends, but at the same time we have this massive blip that's COVID that gave us additional revenue, but we're not asking to spend more money like that in the future, if that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, and just to quantify what that massive blip was, we used to get about 10,000 endorsement apps prior to COVID. At one point, we received 40,000 in 1 year. So that is all revenue that came in. And typically revenue is balanced because our fees for processing license is done on the position that processes that license. So if it takes 5 minutes to do this, if it takes 15 minutes to do this, if it takes 20 minutes to do this, the money for that salary is what's calculated in to pay for that person to do that work. And so all of our fees were set at that. Now, to go into the streamlining process, we did a grad upload process for all of our California grads. And so that does not require a person to sit there and take 5 minutes to do this and 15 minutes to do this and 20 minutes to do this. So that will be a fee decrease for our California grads that we would put forward when we update 1417, because that is now a streamlined process. We're not paying for a person to do that. We do still have to pay for the IT and the upkeep to allow that license to be current. So our fees are fees earned based on the literal person or position that has to do that. Now that is different for renewals. Renewals are based on kind of enforcement related activities that could potentially happen if they have an issue in their practice or substance use or whatever, mental health. In that preceding time, we do collect fees, preempting that, and that comes out of our renewal fees.
Any other questions or comments from board members? No? At this time, BRN moderator, can we please go out to public comment?
We'll be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Board President Trujillo, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. Do we have any in-person requests for comments there in BRN HQ?
No, it doesn't appear that we have any requests for comments here in HQ.
Thank you. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 5.4. This is information and discussion only. Presentation by Timothy Earhart, JD, National Council of State Boards of Nursing, NCSBN, Senior Policy Advisor on the board action pathway.
Board moderator, are you able to elevate him? I do see him in the attendees. Perfect, thank you.
I'm here, just 1 second, setting up.
I can hear you, Tim. I'm sorry, it's kind of low, so we're going to see if we can adjust your volume on our end.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. That's better. Thank you. And we can see you. So the floor is yours.
All right, wonderful. Thanks so much. Thank you for having me here today. EO Melby, as well as board members. Share my screen real quick. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you. I'm going to pause you really quick, Tim, just to kind of give the board kind of a heads up on this. So we've had several asks in our sunset to address kind of our enforcement and intervention and stuff. So we did reach out to Tim to kind of go over the board action pathway, have some discussions, particularly around discipline, and then do some, I believe he has 2 case studies that he's going to go through with this. So he is presenting on Chicago time, so this is during his lunch. Thank you for coming and presenting with us, and we'll turn this over to you. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here. So as EO Melby said, my name is Tim Earhart. I'm a Senior Policy Advisor with NCSBN. A great deal is asked of you as board members. You're asked to carefully consider facts and seemingly innumerable violations on a very regular basis. And you have to come to consistent, legally defensible, and fair outcomes in every single one. The board action pathway is a tool meant to assist you in that decision making. It's meant to achieve those goals by ensuring each potential violation is evaluated in the same manner, utilizing the same criteria to yield a consistent outcome that is based on just culture underpinning. This is just the latest iteration of supplemental tools designed by NCSBN for nursing regulatory bodies. If any of you might have been familiar with, we had a previous tool called the disciplinary action pathway, as well as the adverse action pathway. This is the newest version of that. We had a number of executive officers request an updated version a number of years ago, and through an online virtual committee, we were able to make updates and determine that this model was in line with modern board action. So we updated the name, and we got the PDF, and the rest is kind of history in that facet. So it's kind of a little bit of a roadmap as to what I'm going to cover in this presentation. I'm going to do a little bit of background on the board action pathway analysis. I'm going to transition into reviewing just a little bit of just culture underpinnings, talk about aggravating and mitigating factors a little bit, work our way through the board action pathway itself, and then do a couple examples. One for sure, two if we have time. It really just depends. So let's talk about some of the actual goals and strategy behind the pathway itself. As anything with regulation, our first and foremost goal is obviously public protection, and that's done by overseeing and ensuring safe practice of nursing in our capacity. Now, this is with the board action pathway, we want to incorporate fairness and through our accountability determinations. And what do I mean by that? I mean that through each individual case, we evaluate accountability based on the system context, that being the organizational procedures, their facility guidelines, and the overall structure of the organization, as well as the behavioral choices of the nurse themselves in any type of practice or operational conduct. So, and what this yields is an increase in consistency in evaluating disciplinary cases. So that every violation, again, evaluated in the same way, with the same process, the same methodology, and the same standardizations. That ensures fairness and consistency in your decision-making process. And it also lets your licensees know that their violation is going to be adjudicated on a very consistent basis, that they know they're very familiar with, that they can come to agree, and they know the process itself is going to be fair. So while this tool is designed for board members and for decision makers, this is also very much a guide for your investigators and for your attorney. And I even cover this in the ICRF, the new investigator that we have, and that you can curtail your investigatory report or your questioning of a licensee to coincide with the questions that you know you're going to have through the board action pathway. We already know the considerations that are going to be brought up. We know the aggravating and mitigating factors. We know the questions that are going to ask. By knowing those questions that are going to be asked in advance, it allows you to have a vastly more efficient process where you have your investigators as well as your attorney trying to curtail their actual work to the violation itself and to the process by which it will be adjudicated. Some of the main focuses of the pathway are, as I mentioned before, just culture underpinning. We're evaluating the system for errors as well as the behavioral choices that contribute to error. So the overarching goal here, it's proportionality. We want the crime to match the time, so to speak. We want to make sure that we don't have an overly punitive system, nor do we have a system that lacks any type of teeth. So before I move on to our next iteration, I want to just talk about just some of the basic underpinnings of just culture, just a little bit of a review. So I think as many of you are aware, just culture really tries to balance accountability for actions of licensee with considerations of the system and the violations that occurred. It really stresses shared accountability and, of course, encouraging of reporting. Now, just culture also dictates the healthcare provider duty. Some of those duties include duty to produce an outcome, and by that I mean the responsible to produce a specific effective result. to follow a procedural rule, meaning that the licensee is expected to follow the procedures of and obligations of established rules of their facility itself. And then naturally, of course, they do to avoid unjustifiable risk. And the obligation is really to comport oneself in a manner that does not unnecessarily cause risk or harm to patients, colleagues, or property. And risk is really what we're talking about here in general. It's kind of what it's all about. So we come to the idea of a healthcare track. We want errors to be reported. It's dangerous to be but we also know that a blame-free culture is practical. We can't let all this go. I'm getting a lot of
Hey, Tim, we're going to pause you for just a second. We're having some kind of audio issues here in our room. I don't know if it's on your end or our end, but you sound really muffled. Okay. Do you have a headphone that you can use, Tim, by chance, that we can get like a direct mic?
Yeah. Can you give me 1 second?
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for that. So while we're working on technical difficulties, we're going to take a 10-minute break so we can address this. So you guys, our board members, can use the restroom and come back. Thank you, Tim, for your patience. We'll let you get this fixed. This is such an important part for our board members to get and our public to get. This is also great for nurse administrators out there when they're looking at various issues within their organization and how to address this. So we're going to give it 10 minutes. We're going to work on the technical difficulties to make sure we get the audio better. And we'll see you guys back here at 10:25. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is when we thought we would come back from a break. Hello? We're supposed to be coming back from a break right now at 10:25. So we're asking you guys to kind of settle in. We'll get everything ready. So as soon as our board president walks in, we'll be able to start the meeting. So thank you guys very much for settling back down and getting into our places so we can start our meeting soon.
Can you hear me, Lord?
I can hear you. Can you say a couple of lines, Tim? It became very garbled, so we might have you go back a couple slides. I'm totally sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I just want to make sure that you guys can hear me sufficiently at this point.
It's so much better. Yeah,
Okay.
Tim, just so you know, you're doing an amazing job. Thank you. Our board members have said this is so incredibly important, so that's why we did stop you. So
No, of course.
if you want to go back and kind of reset that foundation and just kind of catch us up to speed, that would be fantastic. We probably lost about 5 minutes of your talk as we kept trying to kind of figure out what was going on here audio wise.
No, not a problem at all. I'm going to go back to the kind of the goals aspect.
Please, I appreciate that. So our board president has just come back in. She's going to establish a quorum and we'll open back up.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Lori. So for the purposes of establishing a quorum, we're going to take roll call. I'm here, obviously. Vice President Neelu Patel.
Patel present.
Board Member Jovita Dominguez.
Dominguez present.
Board Member Patricia Nguyen.
Nguyen present.
Board Member David Lawler.
Lawler present.
Board Member Vicky Granowitz.
Granowitz present.
Board Member Allison Cormack.
Cormack here.
And Board Member Katie Nair.
Nair present.
Thank you. Our quorum has been established. We will move on with the presentation. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Apologies for the technical difficulties. I'm very sorry for that. Okay, so kind of like, let's get back into the why of the board action pathway. So for the goals aspect, who is it for, and what is the actual standardized focus here? What are we trying to get at? I mean, of course, with anything regulation oriented, our primary goal is always going to be public protection through overseeing and ensuring the safe practice of nursing. I mean, just kind of that refrain that we all memorize. But what the big difference here is, I think, the incorporation of the systems approach in risk accountability. And like, in order to make that determination, it demonstrates a fair approach that takes into account a multifactorial analysis based on the surrounding context of each individual violation. You're looking at each violation, you're running it through a standardized set of questions, but at the same time, you're also considering at the end if there were any mitigating or aggravating factors that might lend credence or maybe enhance the actual violation to a degree. So I mean, this is a boutique approach to each individual violation, where you're making considerations that are standardized, but you're also incorporating thoughts out of the actual contextualized situation. It's not just a one size fits all, but it does fit into the same paradigm. So, and with that, fitting everything into that same paradigm increases the consistency in evaluating disciplinary cases, that every single violation is evaluated the same way, the same process, same methodology, and the same standardizations. And obviously, as I said before, that ensures fairness. It also makes this a legally defensible framework for in terms of your licensees. And I've spoken with some of your guys' board attorneys. I know that licensees challenging actions in state court is becoming an all too prevalent thing right now. And so having legally defensible standards that we're going to be able to survive any type of arbitrary and capricious challenge is absolutely the goal. So this is really designed for decision makers as board members, but that's not to say this isn't a tool for your attorneys and your investigators. And I teach this in my intro to Board of Nursing Investigators, that when you're given something that tells you all the questions your board is going to ask of the violation, that's a guide for you. That's a guide to know how to structure your report. That's a guide to know what questions or what information to pull out ahead of time for both your investigators and your attorneys. So while it is meant for decision makers, this is applicable to multiple layers of your disciplinary staff. And this is just a way of kind of lending solid footing for your board action, taking them out of the realm of arbitrary and putting it into the realm of concrete. And while this and also this has a very much a focus on the just culture principle. So we want to be evaluating the system for potential errors, as well as the behavioral choices that contributed to overall error. And so the overarching goal with that is proportional response. Like I said before, it's a boutique approach, but it's also proportional response. We want to make sure the time fits the crime, as I was trying to say before, to use a little bit of an axiom. But we also need to balance those with the interdependent factors. And that was the mitigating and aggravating factors that I was referring to before, which we'll absolutely go into more depth on that. But before we do that, I just want to hit on some of the basic underpinnings of just culture, just a little bit of review. So as I think most of us are aware, just culture really tries to balance accountability for actions of licensees with considerations for the system in which the violation occurred. We're asking for context. This is a system that is focused on shared accountability and, of course, encouraging reporting, which is what we want. We don't want nurses feeling like they're in an atmosphere in which they need to hide mistakes. We want patient safety. So just culture dictates, it stresses that healthcare providers need to produce an outcome. They're responsible to deliver specific and expected results, a duty to follow procedures. You have an obligation to comply with your established protocols, your rules, and your checklists. And most important for our purpose, the duty to avoid unjustifiable risk. This is the obligation to comport oneself in a manner that doesn't cause unnecessary risk to harm or harm to patients, to colleagues, or to property. And this risk is what this tool is all about. So that brings us to a bit of a healthcare quagmire. because we want people to report errors. It's dangerous for those to be covered up, and we want the data that is associated with errors and mistakes with patient care. We also know a blame-free culture is not necessarily a practical application, and we can't let all errors go, or it's going to be a free-for-all. So, simply stated, some errors warrant discipline. There is no way around it. In every system, no matter how well designed, you're going to have some bad actors and some practitioners who are going to make poor decisions. So what we're trying to do is strike a balance in those ideas. And as it's been put in a very famous study, we need to find the balance between the extremes of punishment and blamelessness. And this tool really does attempt to do just that. It looks at the system design and says what in the system might have contributed to the error and what behavioral choices might have contributed to the error. So within the board action pathway, there are what I like to call 4 accountability determinations that we call accountability buckets. Not exactly a term that is grandiose, but it's what we use. And we rank those from the least severe and warranting the least amount of discipline to the most. And within that regard, we have bad intent being at the absolute top of the spectrum for severity. These are going to be your most egregious errors involving a volitional intent, like you have your licensee who knew the consequences of their action, did it anyway, intended to bring about patient harm. And then we have reckless behavior, which is a conscious disregard for a substantial and unjustifiable risk. We have at-risk behavior, which is a behavioral choice, often thought to be justified, that drifts from safe practice. And we have human error, which those are kind of the things that just happen. Every nurse at some point is going to make a medication error. And it's inadvertently doing something that others might have done that might not warrant discipline in that case, but it might, given the context. You have to run it through the pathway. So these are the determinations of accountability we're trying to actually group the violations into based on the conduct and based on the system itself. Now let's look at some of the aggravating or mitigating factors after we've grouped it that might change our opinion of how this violation is going to be handled. So we're trying to bridge the gap between accountability determination and fundamental fairness. And to do that, we look at factors outside of the immediate evidence to look at that contextualizes the situation, contextualizes the violation itself. Aggravating factors are factors or circumstances that increase the severity or culpability of the act. And by that, I mean it makes the action more wrong in and of itself. So in essence, these are contextual facts that surround the action, and they're sufficient to increase inherent wrongness and potentially increase the punitiveness of the board action, the degree of blameworthiness you're really looking at. While mitigating factors essentially are extenuating circumstances, and it's the context that aids in explaining all or some of the potential culpability for the licensee in their act. Mitigating factors can be used to explain away certain behaviors or context given the situation. There's more to the story, so to speak. In both instances, mitigating and aggravating factors allow for the imposition of harsher or lighter board action on offenders. It really just depends on your take on the situation. That's why we have it there, so that you have more authority in terms of the decision. It's not just you land in this bucket, you're here now. So I want to go over a little bit of a hypothetical that involves aggravating and mitigating factors with you all. I don't know how feasible it is to ask for answers for some of these questions. If that isn't feasible, let me know, but I'm going to run through the hypo with you and we can go from there. So, licensee is a former Army medic and current RN. He has confirmed PTSD that is currently being managed. Licensee may suffer from alcohol use disorder and has previously been convicted of operating a motor vehicle under the influence twice. Once 3 years ago, and another instance nearly a decade previous. Today, licensee has been consistently imbibing alcohol at his home throughout the entire day, beginning at 11 a.m. and it is now 6 p.m. Licensee runs out of alcohol and makes the decision to drive to the liquor store down the street from his home. Because his wife is at work and no one else is home, licensee places his daughter, 3 years old, in the back seat to accompany him to the liquor store. Licensee is observed by law enforcement driving erratically and is pulled over. Licensee actually consents to a field sobriety test, which he promptly fails, and is then asked to perform a breathalyzer test. Again, licensee consents and registers a .22 breath test. Licensee is taken into custody and on the way to county jail repeating the same phrase, I was just around the corner and it would have been fine, before falling asleep while detained. What are the aggravating factors in this scenario? Anyone can answer.
The question, sorry.
The child was in the car.
Child was in the car.
That is absolutely one of the aggravating factors in this instance. Driving with the child in the car while intoxicated. Of course, there's absolutely no rationale or explanation for this kind of an act. This is placing a vulnerable person who lacks any type of agency or ability to remove themselves from the situation or account for their own safety. That is a bad one. So that's a bad one. That's a criminal enhancement in most areas.
Very
There's
high
more.
BAC.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Very high BAC.
Absolutely, absolutely. He had two previous. In many jurisdictions, a level up like that is almost 3 times the legal limit, and they consider that an aggravating factor in and of itself. Why? Because it makes the action more wrong. You are more intoxicated. Being that over the limit makes you unable to control yourself in any type of manner. It lends to more destruction, more unsafe practices from that person on the road. There's more.
It's the third DUI in 10 years.
Absolutely. Multiple DUIs. He had 2 previous convictions for OWI. And in some jurisdictions, when you have 2 like that, that's going to be a felony on your second or third. It really just depends on the state. But that's going to yield you a habitual offender status, maybe an aggravating charge in and of itself. And that exists solely for repeat offenders to make the penalty more severe. And this is the licensee's third. Any more?
Maybe lack of accountability, saying that he was just around the corner.
Oh, perfect. Absolutely. Comments regarding just around the corner and it would have been fine demonstrates a complete lack of remorse. They aren't sorry for their actions. They're just sorry they got caught. You can argue that that's in the midst of intoxication, but the phrase still seems to be being uttered repeatedly. Anything else? Okay, let's go at this from the other way. Are there any mitigating factors in this scenario?
The respondent consented to the field sobriety tests and did not, so that's a mitigating.
I could see that. I hadn't necessarily thought of that one, but if they are consenting to not have to just be brought in for a blood draw, I think you could consider that being complying with law enforcement. I can see the argument for that. Absolutely. What else? What about his documented PTSD? And in a lot of jurisdictions, we have what's called veterans treatment courts. I'm sure you guys have them in California. And being a veteran in and of itself might yield you that result, where for a criminal act, where because you're suffering from a substance use disorder, as well as being a veteran with that experience, that we might qualify for a special court, veterans court. So I mean, they're specialized, they're voluntary, and it's more focused on like a problem-solving idea more than a punitive nature. But yeah, that's definitely something to consider. What about his alcohol use disorder? Should we consider that? It's questionable. It's questionable. I mean, it's something that obviously should be brought up. I mean, in an evaluation setting, if anything. but it's questionable whether or not we think that as anything, as any type of mitigating factor whatsoever.
I don't
Right.
know if we have enough history on how his practices to actually look at what some of the mitigating factors might be.
I think it's a fair statement. Yeah, it was a quick hypo. So I hear you. I hear you. More background information obviously is going to lend to more mitigation, as well as aggravating, probably in this context. So yeah, I think that's a very fair statement. All right, thank you for your participation on this. I appreciate that. All right, now let's move on to kind of working our way through the board action pathway itself. So we're gonna work our way through the pathway without any type of example, and then we're gonna work our way through the pathway with an example. So try to give you just kind of the basics of it, and if you have any questions or anything, please do let me know. All right, our first line of inquiry, always with the board action pathway, using the investigatory evidence as well as this tool itself, is, was this deliberate? Were the actions of the nurse intended to deliberately harm the patient? Of course, we hope that these kinds of violations are very few and far between, but this is the starting point every time when considering the actions of the nurse. We are considering whether or not there was intent to harm, whether or not there was volition. Because these actions, they equate to a bad or malintent on the part of the nurse. Like I said, it demonstrates a volitional act, the intent to do wrong and the intent to hurt. And obviously that is anathema to everything that is nursing practice. And because this is bad intent, we want the option to include something very quick, like a summary suspension, if that's available, to remove the nurse from practice and ensure public safety. And for final actions, this is going to be your most severe category in terms of accountability. This stands to reason that this bucket is also going to have the most punitive potential actions. So this is where you're going to be looking at permanent suspension, revocation, surrender. Obviously, this is one of the boxes we hope that we're not going to see a licensee in, but it happens, I think, as we all know. So obviously, thankfully, most likely the answer to that in most cases is no, but it does happen. Our next line of inquiry is going to be to look at the system. We're going to ask, were there significant circumstances involving the system which contributed to the error? And by system in this, again, I mean the organization's operational methods, their processes, or their infrastructure, okay? And an example of this that comes to mind most off the top of my head, the Radon Devat case. I mean, Radon Devat explained herself in an interview that it was a quote, I wrote it down here, "I do not work in a vacuum. I work in a healthcare system." And I thought that was very telling, and just very apropos to this situation. That I'm making no comment as to Ms. Vaught's culpability or liability that may have contributed to errors, but I think we can all say without any hesitation, there were serious system errors that are identified within that case that involved the ADM machine as well as the EHR rollout at Vanderbilt. So, I mean, there are considerations I think that you really need to make within that regard. So that's the first thing. And of course, if the answer to this is yes, if there was a system error, you can communicate this to the facility itself. Obviously, you're under no obligation to do that, but if they don't know about it and you have the potential to help with patient care moving down the road, it's a good thing. So we want to really propound that idea. So after that, we next come to the answer after the systems question is yes or no. You move on to whether whether the answer to the systems question is yes or no. You're going to move on to the next line of inquiry, which is whether the nurse concealed the error or falsified the records. Now, again, we see a very, very bad judgment on the place of the nurse. And if the answer to this question is regarding the concealment is yes, then these actions, again, are going to immediately fall into the reckless category. These actions can have really grave consequences for the patient. I mean, both today and down the road, as the accuracy for their patient care, it's not going to be accurately documented or it's been falsified. That could have drastic consequences down the road for that patient. And then within within the reckless bucket, we also do assess for relevant aggravating and mitigating factors. But in many instances, especially with this bucket, there just might not be that many of them. I kind of want to let you in on that. Just the more severe the violation, oftentimes the less aggravating or mitigating factors there are. More aggravating, less mitigating. So now we're going to look at whether or not the nurse took a substantial risk. We've moved our way through the systems approach. We've asked whether or not the nurse concealed the records. And so we're starting from, were there significant circumstances in the system which contributed to the error? Then did the nurse conceal the falsehood error? The answer to both are no. We're going to ask, did the nurse disregard or consciously take a substantial risk? Now, if the answer to that is yes, then this is also going to be considered reckless behavior. But an important point, consciously acting intentionally with knowledge rather than unknowing or accidentally here. So that's in terms of what you're looking for in terms of a substantial risk. This is not just a risk in which the licensee has no idea what they're actually doing. This is a conscious. So I just want to make that very, very prevalent. An example of that might be if a nurse walked off to take a break and didn't report to anyone that she was actually taking a break. And she had a patient who had very questionable blood pressure emergency who was bordering on an emergency at that time. That would be reckless behavior to walk away without notifying anyone. So we've looked at whether or not the nurse engaged in substantial risk. And the answer to that was no. The nurse didn't actually take much. What happens if the nurse didn't actually take much of a risk at all? We ask, what's the employment history here? And within the employment history of a nurse, we ask, is there a history of the same similar errors? These are all facts that we can hopefully ascertain during the investigation interview with the nurse manager or with the facility. So it's all about looking for similar or serious errors because you want to know if that nurse's history is indicative that she's going to keep making the same errors or potentially more grave errors if left unchecked. So if yes, and there is a history of the same or serious errors by the nurse, then we ask, did the nurse previously receive employer remediation or counseling for a similar error? Again, if the answer is yes, it's repeatedly being done or something similar again and again, then that's going to be reckless behavior, and you should address it in that way. Now let's go back, and let's say the answer is no. There was never any type of errors or need for remediation. Then we ask the question, could a reasonably prudent nurse have done the same in a similar circumstance? Now, if the answer to that is no, then again, we're at the risk bucket, in terms of accountability. And just looking back for one moment, if there's a history of the same or similar errors, no remediation or counseling, that would fall into the at-risk category as well. Now, lastly, of our 4 accountability buckets, we're going to add, like I said before about the reasonably prudent nurse. We ask, excuse me, lost my place here. For our last bucket, if there's no employment history or similar or serious errors by the nurse, we move on to could a reasonably prudent nurse made the same or similar errors? And if the answer to that is yes, then a similar nurse could have made the same errors. Now you're going to be placed in the accountability bucket of human error. Human error, like this is an instance in which you're going to actually consider whether or not discipline is warranted. This is the only bucket in which we're questioning whether or not the licensee should actually receive discipline, or if this could be addressed in a different manner. This might be where you give them a verbal or written warning or a reprimand. This might be the time when you want to have some education for that nurse, some remedial courses, so that you want to remember the error. Again, you want to remember that error and accountability. What was the error, and what do we want to hold them accountable for here? So we want, instead of box checking, we want it to be relevant to the violation itself. So consider, at the end of the day, it comes down to error and accountability. What was the error? How do you, as the nursing regulatory board, want to hold the nurse responsible for the error? And these buckets are just a guide for assessing that. Consider how you can tailor disciplinary action. I did not do that. Consider how you can tailor disciplinary action to most effectively correct the behavior. Said more broadly, what actions can stop recidivism? That's what we're looking for. All right, I'm going to give you but with that, if I don't have any questions, I'm going to give you a case, the recitation of the case facts, and then we're going to work our way through the actual board action pathway. Okay, so this is a complaint that was received in November of 21. The licensee was a very experienced RN, graduated from nursing school in 06, had been practicing nursing since. Past 2 positions had been as a director of nursing at the facilities they worked at. The licensee had no past facility or past NRB complaints outside of this complaint. At the time that this complaint was alleged, there were huge staffing issues in which she had many nurses and CNAs who were continually calling off. Had to ask, and she was forced to ask a CNA if she could work a double shift. So in this particular instance, the licensee was working in her capacity as the director of nursing at a long-term rehab facility. And on this day, we're experiencing staffing shortages once again. The licensee was forced to ask one of her CNA staff to work a double. The CNA was available and willing to fill that backstop. However, one of their medications, metformin, she didn't have it on her at the moment. So, being the resourceful nurse she was, the director of nursing asked the nurse with the cabinet to discarded medications if she could have one of the discarded metformin. This nurse at the time could not find the key to the discarded medication room. And so the director of nursing went to the nurse who was in charge of the medication cart and requested one 500 milligram metformin pill. So the licensee received the metformin pill from the medication cart and gave it to the other CNA. Later, the licensee then actually informed the facility's nurse consultant that she had procured said medication. For her staff member, and this is the conversation that led to reporting. The licensee was ultimately charged with misappropriating the property of the facility vis-a-vis the metformin. Factors to consider here. Licensee is a director of nursing, over 15 years of a nursing career, no same or similar disciplinary history, no NRB complaints. The complaint alleged the nurse misappropriated property. There were facility issues, system errors due to the environment, and the incident was indicative. Was this incident indicative of a pattern or a singular event? In November of 21, anyone remember what was happening at that point? It was a pretty big big public health issue.
Massive, they might say.
Yeah. So you can see that this director of nursing was kind of fighting for her life a little bit. So let's work our way through the pathway here. Okay. Were the actions of this nurse intended to deliberately harm a patient? Anyone can answer? No, thank you. Were there significant circumstances involving the system which might have contributed to this error?
Yes.
Absolutely. Did the nurse conceal the error or falsify the records?
No.
She actually did the exact opposite. She literally reported herself. Did the nurse disregard or consciously take a substantial risk here?
No.
I would agree again. I think we've already answered this question. No employment history or serious errors for this nurse?
No.
Last question. Could a reasonably prudent nurse have done the same in a similar circumstance?
Yes.
I tend to land on yes as well. Oops, sorry. The resolution for this case, I feel like I owe it to you now, having you worked through it with me, is that initially the licensee was found guilty of the misappropriation violation. They did find this to be an at-risk determination in terms of accountability. From there, they ordered both remedial courses as well as a fine and what was the last one? Oh, and a brief suspension. The director of nursing here did appeal. She appealed her decision, and in the appeal, they very much gave a recitation of all of the surrounding facts that I thought they did a pretty good job expounding upon the first time, but they very much reiterated them. And this board action was actually converted into a simple verbal warning. So that was the final resolution of a verbal warning. All right. Complaint number 2. This one is a bit different. This was a very experienced RN, also graduated about 12 years prior. Complaint received alleging the LPN engaged in public verbal altercation in the hallway of the facility that involved swearing and prevented timely care of patients. There were 5 reportables. The verbal altercations with CNA, for timely care, scolding and verbally accosting a resident for speaking to his wife on the phone, entering a room of a resident who had fallen, refusing to help the resident because they had urine and feces on their person, and accusing a resident of intentionally manipulating his colostomy bag that left him with feces running down his leg for approximately 30 minutes, as well as rude, sarcastic, unprofessional when dealing with a resident who didn't think she should be receiving over-the-counter sleeping medication with her medications. So in this first verbal altercation, one of the residents turned on their call light. The licensee came, and he essentially started arguing with the licensee purely because she had actually rung her call light. You referred to the resident as Miss Rockefeller on multiple occasions. And during a facility investigation, it was noted that 4 of the residents and 1 staff member indicated the licensee was rude and hateful when talking to them. And a subsequent Department of Health and Human Services investigation also thoroughly investigated the licensee and shared their report, saying that as a result of licensee's actions in this facility, in totality, not just this violation, had placed residents in immediate jeopardy in over 57 cases. It was also noted that the licensee, after being the only person on call on multiple occasions, refused to come to patients' call rooms and was found sleeping in a back room on multiple occasions. All right, let's run this one through the board action pathway. Were the actions of the nurse intended to deliberately harm the patient?
Yes, I look at that.
Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we're done.
Yeah.
I very much chose that example as a juxtaposition between the first and the second. Like, there is a very large dearth between bad intent and human error in terms of accountability. I wanted to very much try and demonstrate that in terms of the actions perceived. So here you have someone who is verbally accosting patients, honestly being abusive, and you have another licensee who is essentially trying to make sure that her floor was staffed correctly. So there is a lot of wiggle room in between these accountability boxes. So we really do, I think it kind of contextualizes the situation for you in terms of how you need to evaluate this, because there's more to the story. There's more to the story. So with that, I appreciate your time, and I'm opening the floor up for any questions you might have.
Board Member Neela Patel.
Thank you, Tim, for that wonderful presentation. It was really informative, and I appreciate you clarifying a lot of the questions I've had. One of the questions that comes up is whether or not issues arise to the board level, or should they be handled at the hospital or administrative end at the workplace. An example that comes to mind is of a licensee who was accused of administering blood in less than the time that should have been administered, so less than 5 minutes essentially. While that might not be possible, the issue did arise to the board level, and I'm wondering, in your opinion, how do we go about addressing that when, a lot of times these issues can be handled at the workplace?
I think it's all a matter of whether or not if it's a violation, does it rise to the level of a violation in terms of violating your Nurse Practice Act? I mean, I know it's kind of a cop-out answer, but I also think the board is better equipped to deal with a lot of these violations in the facility itself. I think it's a more nuanced approach. I think that you all, the fact that you're all listening to me today, I think is indicative of just that you're trying to come at this from an approach in which you're trying to understand the totality of the circumstance, in which a facility or other organization really might not have that same missions, if you know what I'm saying, that they're not actually coming at. That might be a subsequent part of what they do, but that's not all they do. And that is almost all you do. You evaluate behavior, you set standards. I think you're better equipped to do the actual job, but I think the underlying premise really does go back to the violation of your Practice Act or not.
Yes, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Just to jump in really quick, Tim, just so you have some background. In California, obviously, we have two separate boards. We have a VN board and we have an RN board. The VN board actually has a law that requires employers to report any incident on their licensees to the board. Our board does not have that same law. So it is not mandated for employers to report to us incidences that occur with our licensees. Although that has been an ask from us historically, it's even been put forward into past sunset bills or sunset reports. That has not been something that's been picked up and carried through legislatively. So it is kind of a different atmosphere essentially here in California, where one of our nursing boards has that employer has to report, and our RN board and employer does not have to report. So a little weird kind of legalese here in California that you may not be aware of.
Mike, I do have a follow-up question to that, just because that's who I am.
Absolutely.
Your licensees, then, they still have a mandatory reporting obligation, even if the facility itself doesn't necessarily have a reporting obligation. Is that correct?
Correct. Our licensees still have a mandated reporting under penal code, but again, other licensees may not be aware of what's going on with other licensees, right? Because it may go to a different level. But that does obviously play in, because we do know that a RN is ultimately the supervisor at every single facility. That is a really good thought process that has never been in my brain. So we actually have a RN that has to be over every facility, so they are mandated reporters. So that is a discussion point I will have to take back and ponder on a bit. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Yeah, I mean, I always try to look at that from a different way.
Thank you, Lori. Board Member Vicki Granowitz.
First, I want to say, I don't know if this has already been implemented, but I can tell in reading what feels like thousands of these things that the reports have gotten a whole lot better. I especially like the ones where they actually do what I think of as an executive summary at the beginning, where they give a few lines of what the crime was and what the disciplinary action was, and then I can go in and follow up with more data. Those are my favorites. So if we can have more consistency in how the reports are done, that would be really terrific. I want to talk a little bit about the DUIs, and then there was one that involved shoplifting. And I don't understand what the nexus is between somebody who gets caught for shoplifting and nursing. And so I think there needs to be some analysis of whether there are some crimes that need to be handled through judiciary and not necessarily through the BRN. I think those are kind of overly punitive. I know there are some people would say the nexus is if they would steal from a store, they're going to steal drugs or other stuff from a hospital or wherever they're working. But I would like some discussion about that one. Also, the thing about the DUIs, and again, I know you can make a case either way, but I would prefer that the DUIs where someone is driving to work or from work and they get pulled over, that those come to us or be handled in some way through us. But the ones that are just out in the community, I would prefer that those be handled through the judiciary, because it doesn't really seem like, it seems overly punitive and that they're making a case. Now, I know people would disagree with that, but in reading a lot of these, I just think that we need to spend our time on really looking at the ones that are egregious. And those to me are the egregious ones where we can make a case that there is an absolute nexus between their job as a nurse and their public protection, and the ones where people are partying on a weekend and they're nowhere near working. So I know that that's something that has to go through a lot of stuff, but I'm going to continue to bring it up as Lori's laughing at me. And I had another one, and honestly, I can't read my writing, but there was something about, I thought I had something about error analysis and systems failure, and I thought that some of the error analysis could be a mitigating factor that should have actually been looked at as error analysis. Does that make any sense? I should take better notes, shouldn't I?
A systems error and not a human error?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. That's exactly what I'm thinking. Because a lot of times I look at these things and it's really a problem in staffing. It's a problem in the, there's no detailed processes that are documented for a nurse to have to follow. And so I think that sometimes we see nurses through no fault of their own get caught in things that are systems related to a lack of proper process by the facilities, and the nurses are caught between a rock and a hard place. The other thing, and I've always was caught by this, is that in charting, I see a lot of nurses get caught for lack of appropriate charting, but their choice is between administering to a patient in crisis and doing the note taking in real time. And there is no way that a nurse with the humanness, which most of you have, is going to choose to do charting when they have a patient in crisis, particularly with the OB ones. I've seen a lot of those. And I mean, we actually had one of those last year maybe, that we actually turned down. They were going to revoke her license, but because of the experience. Okay. Well, in general, that if there are ones where you can see the nurses are trying to do patient care, and those are the ones that hurt the most. So anyways, I'll end there.
I would say in terms of your last example that the board action pathway does very much account for that systems error. Like, it's the second question we're asking, and because that informs the rest of the analysis, I think that's when you get into that human error bucket, that's really when you're going to see the absolute best use of those mitigating factors. As to your point, and I think that's what you saw with my first example, is that they really did apply those mitigating factors of this nurse was a director of nursing who was short-staffed in the middle of COVID, was doing nothing other than trying to make sure that her patient population was adequately served, and was not trying to misapprehend property. She was just trying to make sure that her one employee had their correct metformin dosage for that evening. So I do think the model does account for that. Unfortunately, in terms of anything like substance use related, like an OWI or something to that accord, we really can't run that through this model just because it is only for unprofessional conduct and practice errors. But I can tell you that in drafting the new model rules for the boards with NCSBN over the last 2 years, the boards made a policy that they did not just want to know about convictions, they wanted to know about arrests. We asked the membership on multiple occasions in terms of what they wanted reported to them. We asked if it was convictions, we asked whether it was arrests, and overwhelmingly they wanted to know about arrests. So in terms of just the membership in general, that seems to be the trend, where the more information they have, the more they want. That's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing nationally. I'm not making a judgment as to that. I'm just telling you what I've seen.
Board Member Vicki Granowitz.
Sorry. So the other thing that I've seen, and I don't know if there's anything you do about this, but it seems like traveling nurses disproportionately get disciplinary actions, and also you can get the sense that at times there is issues in the facility where some of the staff don't like a particular nurse and they go after them, and it feels that way from reading it. And I don't know how you can structure questions to try to get that, to see if there isn't some underlying, I don't even know what the right word is to use, but retribution going on. We've seen some certainly where they actually were able to identify what was really going on, but those are just things after reading some of these. So anyways, that's it. I've got no more. I promise.
Board Member David Lawler. Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you, Vicki. And I don't know if this clarifies what Vicki is saying, but for me, it seems a matter of semantics, where what she seems to be addressing are cultural issues within clinics and facilities, where we're calling it systems error, which I understand the idea of addressing the flaws in any system that you're managing, but I'm not sure everyone involved in the enforcement process understands perhaps that cultural errors are system errors, even though neither are universal throughout all facilities. So part of a system is the culture of the clinic, where you're going to have nurses who are responding to traveling nurses or other people in certain ways. Maybe there are more offenders hired for whatever reason in one specific clinic, but I like the idea of including culture and cultural issues as part of a systems problem.
I think that culture is inherent to any facility in the system. Like, I think that is absolutely a part of it. You can't separate one from the other. I think that's a very good point.
Thank you. Board Member Katie Nair.
Thank you, Tim, for this great explanation. I'm super excited for the board to have this clarity in regards to pathways. Coming from an acute care setting, we do practice this within our acute care, but there are gaps across the state of California regarding whatever setting that you sit in. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to leverage that partnership and use this pathway as a guiding tool for facilities to implement and hopefully offset and align with what our vision is. So great job. Thank you for this. And I'm looking forward to partnering.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that idea is absolutely awesome. Like, that is exact. If the information is out there, why not make them aware of it and be transparent in the decision process? If you know how you're going to be evaluated, you know how to comport yourself. And it's the same premise as letting your investigators and attorneys build off of this. I'm always a fan of transparency. Thank you.
Board Member Allison Cormack.
Thank you, Chair Trujillo. Thank you so much, Mr. Earhart. I think, I have to think how many years I've been on this board, three, maybe? I have to do math, 3. I have arrived at some of these questions as ways to differentiate after reading many, many, many cases. And I want to focus on the third question, which is, did the nurse conceal the error or falsify the records? Because I'm really glad to see that called out. Because we talked about before about falsifying records is crucial. I mean, accurate records is crucial for people's health that day and going forward. It's something I did not appreciate until I was on this board. And when people ask me what I've learned, I'm like, this is one of the key things I've learned about the practice of nursing. The documentation is everything. And I promise you people get in trouble if they don't do it because it ties to health. But I think the part about concealing the error is the part about a learning culture, right? You talked about, I think, a blame-free culture. I tend to use the positive, so a learning culture, right? And for me, that is it happens to be in the center of the pathway. But the rest of it all makes sense and is things that I feel that I consider and that we've discussed and we see. But and it's rare. I just want to say, and it's rare that nurses conceal or falsify records, but this to me is a real crucial part about why we review these and why we discipline nurses. So I'm super grateful for this, and I think future board members hopefully will get this as part of their onboarding to help them think through, because it's hard. We get a lot of things. They're all electronic. There are different variations. Not all of them have the executive summary because some of them come from the ALJ, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mr. Bunter, I'm sure will give a more, coherent approach. But I also like using this the terminology of the accountability, right? Bad intent, reckless, at risk, human error. And I think this is incredibly useful. I'm sorry I didn't have it 3 years ago. If it existed, I'm sorry I hadn't read it. But I appreciate it, and I think it. I'm newly appreciative of NCSBN. So not that I wasn't before. I understand it's important, but this is the first thing I found. The first one would have been the study about the 3 years for substance abuse. And that has been a key driver that I use routinely in discipline decisions. So super grateful for this and for your thoughtfulness. And I do just want to address briefly Board Member Granowitz's concerns, which, she shared multiple times. We're not actually agendized for DUI discussion today. Is that correct? Correct. So at some point, I think it's actually worth having, but it's absolutely worth having, but I think we probably need more information. I think I mentioned that last time. But I appreciate EO Melby, you bringing this to us, and I'm confident it will be used going forward frequently.
Thank you. And then just one kind of add on real quick. This is a board action pathway on NCSBN that is not behind the Passport logon. There is a nurse administrator board action pathway as well that almost mirrors this identically, that any healthcare organization out there has access to and can utilize this when they're looking at any kind of decision-making processes for their licensees at their facilities.
I just wanted to add that in terms of the accountability determinations, we did pull those straight from the Just Culture literature. Other than bad intent, the reckless, at risk, and human error, that's straight from the study themselves. So I really do think that is an apropos determination.
Okay, Tim?
Yes. Good morning. Tim Bunger, Deputy Chief of Discipline, Citations, and Probation here at the board. Based on the comments, just want to come up here and provide a couple insights from the enforcement side on the cases that may not get to you for your votes. All of our cases that involve a standard of care issue do go to an expert witness. Our experts are very well versed in their field of practice to be able to provide that expert opinion. With that, they are looking at system-related issues that was there something at that facility that could have contributed to the error, kind of acting as a mitigating factor towards accountability or disciplinary action. But the bigger one is when we have companion cases. So when you have 15 cases from one unfortunately, I'll use the skilled nursing facility example. But they'll look at it and they're looking at all 15 cases and can see that cultural issue across the board that may go, nope, they were set up to fail from the get-go. Facility level issues are outside of our purview. We do refer complaints to Department of Public Health as that is theirs, but we do have our experts looking at that standard of care. So if you're seeing cases where there may be a system issue, sometimes they get through, but a lot more get stopped at our expert level before they even get to you for vote or discipline.
I'm glad you addressed that, Tim. Thank you so much, because I'm wondering how can we be, as a board, or even give advice to the RN, for instance, to be more preemptive or proactive about not being under this issue. What am I trying to say? We see things when they come to the discipline, right? When they are being disciplined. However, RNs are being put in these situations because of cultural issues time and time and time again. What can RN do? What can we advise the public to do before it gets to that level of where one particular RN or many RNs get disciplined for a systems issue that has been an issue for a very long time that's not being addressed? That makes sense?
Yeah, but I don't have a good answer for you.
I know, right? I mean, that's what I see on my end, and I don't know what to give, as an advice either.
So there are a couple things that they can do. So as a nurse within a facility, there is always a risk manager or somebody that is above. And so you could bring those up to your unit managers, to your unit educators. You can ask for a root cause analysis or a failure means analysis. You can ask for those to occur. If you're not getting support on that, you can go all the way up to your chief nursing officer. So Katie Nair could definitely expand on that if she chooses to. You don't have to. I don't want you to put you on the spot, but that is absolutely something that can be done. Additionally, because facilities are not overseen by our board, that is not our jurisdiction, we're the licensees, you can make a facility complaint to the California Department of Public Health. That happens frequently. And then just like we go in and evaluate our schools, or we go in and investigate a nurse, California Department of Public Health goes in and as the state, and they will come in and do a facility review. In my past life, there was a couple facilities that I worked at that the state was called in, and that state at that point was CDPH, and they would look at issues that were coming up. Also, if you are a unionized hospital or a unionized facility, reach out to your union rep and point out those issues and have them work with you to address that within that system as well. There are many avenues that you can work with to get that evaluated. But ultimately, again, if you had an error that you were a part of, don't conceal it. That's the biggest thing that I could say is don't conceal it, report it up, let that path kind of take it. Because again, if you look at this pathway, we get down to that question is, did you conceal it? And then that aids in that decision-making process that we have.
Stat that I've been waiting to find the right opportunity to share with you all at some point during the next 2 days was we were doing numbers for Sunset, and we were looking at, of the complaint volume received compared to our licensee population, how many nurses even get complaints? It is 1.07%. It is extremely low. And as you've heard us talk before, the number of that then leads to discipline is another 1% of the 1%. So it is exceedingly rare. Does not negate the fact that for that individual nurse, it's a very significant part of their life, but it is a very, 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 very small percentage of the overall population.
Thank you, Tim. Any other questions or comments from board members?
I'll just make one comment to Member Patel. I really encourage, going back to the just culture that we just spoke about, speaking up for safety, speaking up for that culture that you do not believe is in the best interest for the patients or for you as an employee. There is that chain of command, and unfortunately, when that chain of command within the organization you work for does not listen when you speak up, that's when people select and choose other alternative sources, which is reaching out to regulatory, CDPH, et cetera. And that is the last thing an organization would want, is to have an outside person come in and evaluate. But sometimes that's what it takes to get that culture to change. So I really encourage every employee, every licensee that's out there to continue to speak up, ask the right questions, because there is a pathway to ensure that you are in a safe environment.
Thank you, Katie. Any other questions or comments from board members? Thank you, Tim.
Reza, just a quick thing, somewhat kind of going back to Vicky's comment and maybe just kind of food for future thought. This board action pathway is super helpful to kind of just have all in one convenient place. I believe Mr. Earhart mentioned it is intended for practice violations and unprofessional conduct, and it kind of leaves out the like DUIs and other kind of non-practice related cases. Just again, circling back to Vicky's comment about like the DUIs and the shoplifting and things like that. This is not anything that any of you don't know, but we have a requirement in statute that any convictions that we use as the basis for discipline be, quote, substantially related to the practice of nursing. That can be, you may ask two reasonable people, and they may differ on what is substantially related to the practice of nursing. In some categories of conduct, you do have further guidance from case law where, for example, with respect to DUIs, we have case law that says that type of conduct is substantially related to the practice of nursing, or at least that it can be. It's not that every instance necessarily is by law, but there are other categories of conduct that, of course, have not been litigated to an appeals court, and you don't have case law guiding you whether, that's substantially related to the practice or not. And that's somewhat up to the board. And really, there's at least two levels of filtering that occur. One is at the enforcement unit level, which they're the ones that decide whether to bring the cases in the first place and make a determination of whether a crime is substantially related to nursing. And then if they decide to bring the case and a judge writes a decision that's sent to the board itself then is a second kind of layer of filtering to decide whether it agrees that conduct was substantially related. So there's opportunity to, and I know that you've looked at this closely and at times have kind of weeded out cases that you really didn't feel strongly about being tied to nursing. But going forwards, that's an area where you can look at, is specific conduct substantially related to nursing? I believe with respect to substance abuse, we have, some of you may recall or have heard about the Substance Abuse Coordination Committee, which had previously convened and resulted in the uniform standards for substance abusing licensees that we currently have. My understanding is that Substance Abuse Coordination Committee is kind of revamping and reconvening at this time to do another kind of look and run through of the uniform standards. And so that may be an opportunity, through the board's participation in that to, just have another look at how we treat substance abuse cases and they're like I think Lori or Allison alluded to, maybe it may be worthwhile to focus future agenda discussions on substantial relationship to Substance Abuse Coordination Committee, just specific crimes in general that you think are or are not substantially related. Just wanted to add that piece. Again, nothing new, but as we received this board action pathway framework, just wanted to throw that in there as well, just because it's somewhat on the topic of what Vicky was speaking to. Thanks, that's all.
And just so the board is aware, the SAC meeting, or the Substance Abuse Coordination Committee meeting, is something that is put on by DCA. They coordinate that. I am on that. And when we reconvene that, we will be an active participant of it. So we'll be working together with that. I already reached out to staff and got some feedback on some topics and stuff that we would want to bring forward to the SAC meeting. So we are prepared and ready to move forward with that. So we will look at future agendas for doing the substantially related to the practice of issue, and we could discuss kind of DUIs and stuff all within that kind of same agenda item.
Thank you very much, President. Thank you, Lori. I would be very interested in learning more about whether nurses are treated differently than the other healing arts boards. So I'm glad that DCA is looking at this. Generally, we keep hearing that we're harder on those kinds of offenses than other boards. So this might be a great opportunity for us to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you. It also, and Tim, you can probably attest to that too, is different boards in different states look at them differently. And I believe Montana, I was at the NCSBN conference last week, and Montana shared that first DUI doesn't even go to their board. It's just 100% first DUI doesn't ever go. And that was a legislative change that they had at theirs. So we do know that the DUI topic is in our sunset background paper that we put forward. And then it's also in the background response paper. So we know that the legislative staffers are looking at that and preparing to discuss that this legislative session. So we will work with them to kind of look at that pathway and what that looks like for California going forward.
Wisconsin's first OWI isn't even a criminal offense.
Okay, thank you.
Just giving you a heads up.
Different state to state, not even just within our state, different board to board. So we have abilities to kind of address that, but a lot of this will have to end up going probably through a statutory change or regulatory.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Board Member Allison Cormack?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about legislation, though, we also have, you know, families of people who've been killed by drunk drivers who are wondering why anyone who has a DUI is continuing to be able to drive. So it's not necessarily just going to be a relaxation. I think it's probably a time, if we look at the number of people who've been killed by cars in the past, I think it's 4 years, it's going up substantially. So I appreciate the concept of, you know, rehabilitation and mistakes. And I'm also aware that we're responsible for public safety. So it's absolutely worth engaging in. But, you know, for me, for the time being, you know, I'm going to, you know, comply with, you know, what the information we have to date, which is that it is substantially related. So it's an important topic, but I think it's, we're going to need to hear from a variety of people.
Thank you, Allison. Board Member Vicki Granowitz.
I think in reference to what you're saying, I did say to allow it to go through the adjudication process, and there is punishment. There is all kinds of probationary things that these folks, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be consequences. I'm saying that perhaps we don't have to also do it in certain situations, but that the criminal justice system can do it right now. We have double punishment going on between what happens through the criminal justice system and then what happens through the BRN. So I'm familiar with, yeah.
Thank you, Vicki. Any other questions or comments from board members? All right. BRN moderator, can you please open us up for public comment?
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in the request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Anonymous would like to make a comment. 1 second, please. Anonymous, again, there should be a small window that pops up on your computer somewhere. Could be behind what you have open. and you have to press it to unmute. If you can't unmute, go ahead and type in your comment. While we wait for Anonymous to type in their comment, Board President Trujillo, are there any public requests for comments there in VRN HQ?
No, there doesn't appear to be any other requests for comments here in HQ.
Thank you.
Board moderator, is Anonymous calling in from a phone or a computer?
Computer.
Computer, okay. Maybe they don't have a microphone or something installed.
Anonymous, you have been sent the unmute request. If you can't unmute, go ahead and type in your comment.
Anonymous, we've received 3 comments that says, I would like to ask a question. If you are unable to mute and come on, we would love for you to type out your question so that we can read it and address it. We can see that you are able to communicate and type out, but what we keep getting from you is, I would like to ask a question. I'm not sure if you have multiple screens up on or multiple tabs open on your computer, but if you do, if you're able to minimize the WebEx or minimize any of the tabs that you have open, you will see a small box that pops up that'll say unmute me, and you do need to click on that in order to participate. But if you have Windows up in front, you will not be able to see that button and you will not be able to participate. So the comment that just came through says, what if the complaint is retaliation against the nurse? How does the board handle that? And so that was kind of brought up for discussion here. We did kind of talk about that as other factors that we look at and whether or not it is definitely seen as a retaliatory in nature, and they do consider that in the factors that they use, in the facts that they use to determine the outcome of the investigation and ultimately what is done to the license. So that is absolutely something that is considered. Did that answer your question, or do you have more to add?
While we wait, this is Reza, legal counsel. I'll just add to Lori's answer on that. When somebody has a license and the board receives a complaint against them and is looking to take disciplinary action, the burden legally is on the board to prove by clear and convincing evidence that the factual basis for the discipline occurred and that discipline is warranted. So the main point is that the burden is on the board, and a full investigation is done by the board. The licensee who's the subject of the complaint has due process rights. They have the opportunity to present evidence, present a defense against the complaint, and through that process, they would indicate to the investigator that the complaint may be retaliatory or not have any merit to it, and the investigator would evaluate that and look into those charges of retaliation and sort all that out. Ultimately, if it's brought to hearing by the board, again, the licensee has an opportunity to present their case to the administrative law judge, including a defense of retaliation, et cetera. So the board takes that very seriously, and there are several opportunities throughout the process for the licensee to present that information that there may have been an ulterior motive for the complaint.
Thank you. And Anonymous responded back that yes, their question was answered. So we can move on with public comment unless there is no more public commenters.
Did you see the last response?
Oh, okay. So it says, well, under investigation by the BRN, is the RN still allowed to continue practicing? Yes. Unless something egregious has occurred and we've pursued an interim suspension order or a PC 23. But while a complaint is received, it has to be investigated, and then a accusation must be filed, and then pending the outcome of that, they would be put maybe into probation, which they're still allowed to work during probation. And actually that is a condition of probation, is they do have to work to be able to complete their probationary term. They can also go into the intervention program, and once cleared could return to work at that point. So we do want our licensees to continue to work as long as the public is protected. Okay, it does look like board moderator. Is there any more public comment?
Nope, that is all. Board President Trujillo, there are no other public requests for comments on the WebEx. We have no in-person requests for comments there in BRN HQ. Would you like me to close this window?
Thank you. So we're moving on to items.
Oh, hang on. Thank you, Tim.
Thank
you.
you.
Can go on to your, I believe the Discipline Knowledge Network is coming up. So you'll be off in time to start that, and I will not be attending today. I apologize. So I will look at the Hive and get the information afterwards. Thank you.
It's okay. Tim Butner is going to be one of my speakers, so we're good. California is represented.
Yes. Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Got it. All right, moving on, as this was a information only. We're going on to item 6.0. This is BRN future priorities and proposals for review and possible action. 6.1, discussion and possible action. Presentation on the action plan to provide notice and address issues related to scope of practice and supervision for compounding drugs.
Thank you for that. So this has been a long time coming. We've talked about this kind of within our board meetings as well as within our advisory committee meetings with our advanced practice RNs. We've also been bringing it up with our academic partners. And so when we as BRN reached out to the Department of Consumer Affairs when we started to see an uptick in complaints brought forward to us with compounding at med spa, IV hydration clinics, just a myriad of places that this stuff is done and provided. And so when we took a big look at this and we got other boards and bureaus involved, we started to kind of come to a common theme within our nursing population, both in RNs and advanced practice RNs. And that's that our RNs and advanced practice RNs are not understanding that they are violating the Nurse Practice Act and that compounding is not within their scope of practice. And so when we started to look at this more, we started to get more and more complaints. Like the complaint volume has increased so much with our med spa IV hydration clinics. And so based on that, our investigation caseload is increasing so much too. And really what we don't want to do is become a punitive board, right? So we're like, what can we do to kind of head this off? And that is really just coming down to education, education, education. With working with the pharmacy board, which obviously holds the regulations for compounding, what they shared with us is when they go in and inspect pharmacies, which they are allowed to do, and they are able to go and inspect offices that do compounding, when they've gone in, they've actually asked for a demonstration on how they compound. And so noting that physician and pharmacists can compound within the state of California, and our RNs and advanced practice RNs cannot. And so what would happen is an RN or an advanced practice RN in the clinic would be very excited to show them how they compound, because they knew they were compounding and doing it right. And so they would bring them back to the area and they would open it up and they would show them how they would prepare that medication for administration. And by doing so, they were doing everything correctly, except it was not their scope of practice. And so by doing so, they demonstrated that they were in violation of the scope of practice. When looking at all of those details that come into us, it was very, very clear that our RNs did not understand, and our advanced practice RNs did not understand that they could not compound. So meeting and talking with our academic institutions as well, it was discovered that there was a lot of confusion between admixing and compounding, and that's really where the problem came from. So historically, and I could even talk about when I became a nurse, 20 some years ago, you would grab an IV bag and you would grab several different medications and you'd grab it up and you inject it into the bag and you walk into the room and you hung it and you walked out, and that's what you did. And then all of a sudden there was a big push with JCAHO and stuff as they came through saying, you guys aren't supposed to do that. And so now IVs come pre-mixed and labeled for a specific patient after they've been ordered by a provider that has the ability to order this treatment regimen. So additionally, that is what is kind of happening in our med spas. So you'll have a provider that comes in and says, this is the medications that are needed for this course. And unfortunately, at that point, instead of having them go out to a compounding pharmacy or having a pharmacist on staff or a physician on staff go and grab an IV bag where they would then mix several vitamins or supplements or medications together, the RN is doing that and the APRN is doing that, and that is in direct violation of their scope of practice. So we are launching a campaign. Our staff is gearing up for this because we know it will cause a very large ripple in the pond as soon as we send this information out. So we wanted to make sure our board members and our public that are on this committee, on this meeting, are very aware of what is about to happen. And so these med spa IV hydration clinics are very profitable and are in very large numbers, specifically in California. And so when we send this messaging out, we expect your email boxes to be flooded. We expect to be a large outcry to potential representatives and legislative staff, unions, et cetera. And we do expect a large reach out to our public information unit as well as board staff. So, because it's going to disrupt the flow of those very profitable, widespread organizations throughout our state. So in this agenda item summary, you can see just kind of the basis and the premise of this. In Business Professions Code 2725.1b, it actually states very clearly in our statute, no registered nurse shall compound drugs. And I think our academic institutions, when working through that, are aware of that statement. I think when they teach the RNs through the pharmacology course, they're aware that RNs cannot compound. And I believe even in our advanced practice programs, they are aware of that and they know that RNs cannot compound. I think where the miss happens is that the difference between admixing and compounding is, again, not clear, and that then goes out into our healthcare institutions as well. So compounding involves altering a medication from its original form, which may include but is not limited to using a different diluent than specified, changing the concentration, or mixing ingredients not described in the package insert. So if your package insert says mix with 500 cc's of saline, you're not compounding, you are admixing, and that's completely fine. If your package says mix with 500 cc's of saline and you do that, and then you grab another package that says mix with 500 cc's of saline and you insert that into the same IV bag that has that first drug in there, you are in fact compounding, and that is no longer allowed. So you cannot do that. Again, the two people that can do that is your pharmacist or your physician, but no other RN or APRN. When you go to admixing, to be what is admixing, it says on the agenda item summary, admixing refers to medication preparation that follows the manufacturer instructions exactly without deviation. This includes but is not limited to reconstituting a powdered drug using the listed diluent, preparing an IV medication according to the package insert, or drawing up medication for immediate administration as recommended by the manufacturer. So hopefully it is very, very clear that if you're following the label, you're good to go. If you deviate from that label in any way, including mixing medications, you are not. And so in the ones to follow, starting on page 5, there is list serve message. This message is what is going to be sent to all 500,000 plus licensees. So this message is going to go out and it will be sent to everybody that has an RN license in the state of California. That will hit all of our APRNs, that will hit all of our academic institutions, since all of our academic institutions, each administrator, each faculty must be licensed as an RN. So this will cause a little bit of kind of unease as they realign with what is required within California. Additionally, on page 6, we have social media messaging, post 1 through 6, and we are going to use our social media avenues to get the messaging out as well, because we do know that not everybody checks their email, but we also know not everybody gets on social media, so we're hoping to hit as many as we possibly can with that. And so we tried to make this as short and sweet and clear as possible to get that message out, because what we're ultimately hoping for is them to stop doing this so that we do not have to put them through the disciplinary process, that they're able to find a backup. Some of the comments that I've received as we've been moving this forward is Pharmacy Board, and they are in our public right now listening because they're very excited about this messaging going out. And thank you again, Christina Costa, for helping us out with this. It's going to really just kind of hopefully decrease the amount of investigations and complaints that are coming in once this kind of settles. In the meantime, they were saying, what do we do? And truly, what do you do? What can you do? And that is get an order, send it off, receive the medication prepared patient specific with the label, with the dosage for the individual patient that you're treating. So you will have to have a examination, an order, and it does need to be patient specific. It will disrupt the flow of how that happens, because right now there's a lot of like hangover clinics and stuff that says, hey, if they come in and they say they have a headache or nauseated, mix this, and give it to the patient immediately. Again, that can happen if you have a physician on staff and the physician is doing this. That can happen if you have a pharmacist on staff and a pharmacist is doing this. It cannot happen if you're an RN or APRN. You do need to have that prepared by somebody that is legally able to do that in the state of California, and that is not you. And so work with that. I do know that in the sunset process, this was brought up to legislative staffers, that they're asking for this law to be changed, potentially to allow RNs and or APRNs to compound. If that law changes, then we change our stance on this. But the law, the way that it's written today, says no, this cannot occur. So finally, on page 8 and 9, this is a preview of what we will be sending to our board staff to add a web page within our website. So we will then have this information on our web page going forward for people to have a quick reference. Now, I do want to do a call out that is not in this information, just so it doesn't cause great havoc, especially with our CRNAs. I do want to make sure that this is something that we address. There is a provision in our state law that allows for RNs or APRNs to do an urgent or emergent compounding. And that has to be essentially life or limb sparing. And it has to be patient specific, and it has to be administered within 4 hours of that being done. So if you are in an operating room and you are managing that patient through anesthesia, and there comes a time where there is a urgent condition that needs to be addressed immediately, you are able to compound 3 sterile medications only. And the IV is one of those sterile medications. So you are able to add to that IV 2 medications, and that is it. That is the extent. And it is a very specific instance, and there is very specific documentation that has to be followed for that specific instance. And that is all going to be covered within your surgery center or your hospital bylaws on how that is managed. And there has to be clear documentation that you had to follow that specific path to do that. So that is not the norm. And that can only happen in a life or limb sparing instance. And there is no med spa or IV hydration clinic out there that will ever run into a life or limb sparing instance that way, that allows them to add, to compound in that way. So coming under those kind of compound guidelines, if you run into that instance in a outpatient like setting, it should be call 911 and then send them over. I do want to share that there is several different areas that are involved in this. We have the USPS guidelines. We have our pharmacy board that really oversees this. There's also, it's called DCSCA, and that's the Drug Supply Chain Security. We'll be going into that in future board meetings and future kind of education because what we're also seeing is people are procuring compounding medications from non-compounding pharmacies and other areas that are not approved. And so that is a large issue as well, especially for our APRNs. And then there is a, people are familiar with kind of outpatient surgery centers, except there's an organization called Quad A that is a accrediting agency. And they jumped on this, and they now have a non-surgical aesthetic and wellness med spa accreditation program. And they provide that service with many, many various avenues of guidance. There's a standards manual that is almost 60 pages long. I did have to review that as well to get this information prepared here, and it is stellar. It truly does clear up a lot of those. And then just kind of an overall messaging from our board to our licensees. If you are approached by a company that says we are a one-stop shop and we will set up an IV hydration or med spa setting for you, all you have to do is use your license and you're able to do this, question that. Question that, contact us, contact anybody other than them to get what is real, because there are many predatory predatory businesses out there that reach out to our licensees that says you'll never have to have a administrator to answer to. You can make your own hours. It's very profitable. Please come and do this. I'm going to set you up with an overseeing physician. I'm going to go through all of these processes with you. Do not walk into that without researching it. There may be some legitimate companies, but we're hearing there are more companies that are not legitimate than there are that are legitimate. And the people that take the fall for it are our licensees for practicing outside of their scope, because they may not have the appropriate supervision. They are not set up with the appropriate tools to compound, and therefore we can't take action on a business that is not a licensee. We are only able to take action on the licensee for not practicing within their scope. So please heed that, contact us. Do not just do it because you heard your best friend did it and this other person did it and now they're millionaires. If it's too good to be true, it is too good to be true. Please ask the question. Please do the research, because it's our licensees that are being targeted. It's our licensees that are being disciplined, and those business walk away scot-free just to get another licensee to do what they're doing and charge them the money to oversee that. So thank you guys for listening to that. If you have any questions, please let me know. This messaging is planning to go out April. And we're not going to do April 1st because we don't want people to think that it's April Fool's Day, but it will go out in April. So we're going to give you a little time for this to settle a bit if there's information coming to us after this board meeting, but definitely wanted to give you guys a heads up.
Thank you for that, Lori, and that clarification. My concern, I hope you're right. I beg to differ. I think it's going to increase some complaints because of this coming forward. I would like to say that some of the discipline that we see hasn't resulted in harm necessarily. It's the fact that it's occurring. That's a discipline that we see. My other concern is that if a physician, aside from an anesthesiologist, I don't know, a physician anesthesiologist, I don't know very many other physicians that are customarily mixing up medications. So if a physician or a pharmacist mixes up a medication and the nurse were to hang that medication, where does the liability fall on that, right? And so that becomes an issue as well. So I'm voicing my concerns. Again, we have to work under the statute. I understand that. And I'm glad that this is going to come out to all nurses so they're aware, so they're not doing things that they're not supposed to be doing.
Board Member Tricia Wynn.
Thank you very much, Executive Officer Melby. This is, I think, a very good first step in terms of educating our licensees. We don't want to get them in trouble. We really want everybody to be playing under the rules. I'm just wondering how many complaints we are getting on compounding right now, and is it increasing?
I can't give you an exact number on compounding because this was relatively new to us. We didn't have it coded as a specific complaint around compounding or med spa IV and stuff like that to track it. That is something that we've asked to be added to our system so that we can track this going forward. But what I can tell you, it's absolutely an increase because we never had this before. Okay. So even receiving one has been an increase, but I can tell you as I'm involved in that triaging process with our team, there is many complaints coming in. We are also receiving these complaints from the pharmacy board. We're receiving these complaints from the physician assistance board. We're receiving these complaints from the med board. And we're also receiving these complaints from osteopathic. We are receiving these complaints from barbering cosmetology. We are receiving complaints from all of our partnering boards because these nurses are setting up businesses in other areas. And so they may have partnered with a chiropractor or a naturopathic doctor to do these IV supplement administrations in their office. A chiropractor and a naturopathic doctor cannot oversee nursing practice. And so they cannot be the person of record that is the supervising or consulting physician. Additionally, barbering and cosmetology will go out and inspect their aesthetic areas and look at that. And what they find as an RN doing Botox or providing other IV hydration therapy kind of services within a hair salon or a nail salon or something to that effect. And so we will receive complaints from them that says, hey, I was out here and I was looking at our licensee populations. And by the way, I noticed an RN back in the corner doing this. When we get the complaints from osteopathic and med board, there is a process that is used in our state that is called a fictitious naming permit, and it's called FNP. We always confuse that because we're like family nurse practitioner, what? But there is a FNP process, which is a fictitious name license and they apply to the med board and the osteopathic board for that fictitious name permit. And when they reach out to vet the overseeing physician or osteopathic doctor there, I have no idea who this nurse is. I've never agreed to do this. Somebody picked a name out of the hat and put it forward. And that is what a lot of these larger organizations that says, hey, come to us and we'll find you a supervising physician. It's like they just do a Rolodex or something and say, this looks good, I'm going to match it. This provider has no idea that they're providing those supervisory oversight to the APRN or the RN that is doing this. They have no idea about it. So when they do the fictitious name permitting and they discover that, they send that over to us for investigation as well. So it is a very large problem. We are receiving more and more and more complaints as more and more boards are becoming more aware of it. It's not necessarily coming from the public yet. Right. So, and that's because the public doesn't know, because an RN starts IVs and APRN starts IVs and they administer medication. So it seems legit. It seems like that's something that can be done. And so because it's not known that it cannot be done, we're not getting a lot of the public complaints. The public complaints we receive are if there's a phlebitis, if there's an allergic reaction, if there is some kind of sepsis or something that happens because this wasn't done right. There have been reports in other states, not ours, but commonly compounded right now is like Ozempic and Zepbound and weight loss meds and stuff like that. And there was in another state, and it was in the media and stuff, that an RN received a compounding medication, took it, and ended up in total organ failure and died. And so obviously that hasn't come to our state yet, but the risk is there. That is an injectable. It's not like you can just take it out once it's in. It's injected sub-Q and it's in your body and it doesn't go away for a week. And so at that point, you're in organ failure, and unless we're able to help bring you out of that, you're not going to make it through that, because organs are required for life. Go figure. So there are just various things that happen like that. There was an incident, I believe, where a naturopathic physician administered turmeric IV, I think is what I heard, and that caused a patient death as well. So there are instances that have occurred that have resulted in patient injury and death. Not so much within our board yet, but the complaints that we are receiving are coming from other healing art boards that are noticing that our practitioners are operating out of scope. So we want to get ahead of this before our licensees cause harm.
Thank you.
Yep.
Board Member Katie Nair.
Executive Officer Melby, just a clarifying question. In your example of the OR and the compounding, I understand the definition of life and limb, and you said there's a very strict regimented documentation piece. I think I need clarification. I may have misheard you, but I thought I heard the word for. But is it 4, or like, is there a time frame of like 4 hours, 4 minutes? So if you can just clarify that piece.
4 hours.
4 hours.
Yes.
Of documentation or
no, 4 hours that you have a chance to admit to compound that medication and utilize it for that patient.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments from board members? No? Okay, so we could go ahead and make the motion. I move to accept the action plan to provide notice and address issues relating to scope of practice and supervision for compounding drugs.
Jovita Dominguez seconds.
Thank you. BRN moderator, can you please take us out for public comment?
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Melanie Rowe would like to make a comment. 1 second, please. Melanie, on your computer, a little box should have opened up that says unmute me. There you
I had
go.
like 3 more questions that I had to answer. Thank you very much. I am Melanie Rowe. I'm a CRNA and the Practice Division Director for the California Association of Nurse Anesthesiology. Thank you for addressing the public's concerns about RNs, compounding, and med spas and hydration clinics. When reading the entire Business and Profession Code 2725.1, specifically the sentence before the language that says, "No RN shall compound," it is clear that this article concerns compounding pharmacies and the business of such entities. It is not regarding the daily workflow of nurses who have been educated and trained to prepare immediate use compounded sterile preparations. The USP made revisions in 2023 to the General Chapter 797 that are based on updated and current scientific evidence, stakeholder feedback, and scientific opinion from various experts. The American Association of Nurse Anesthesiology extensively commented on 3 drafts of revisions released for stakeholder input and advocated for medication preparation in anesthetizing locations. These revisions affect all locations where healthcare medications are compounded. These 797 revisions include strict training and competency assessment and are specific to tasks performed according to the facility's policies and procedures. It includes immediate use for emergency, urgent situations where delaying treatment would harm the patient, along with other safeguards. We appreciate EOMLB's mention of our practice, but as the board addresses compounding as it relates to med spas and hydration clinics, we urge the board to consider adopting the updated 2023 USP 797 standards in the future to reinforce the safety and compounding medications in the anesthesia environment. Thank you.
Okay, so just to provide some feedback on that, compounding is not done through our board. We do not have any laws on the regulation or utilizing and how that is done and document, et cetera. That is all done through our pharmacy board. Subsequent to the USPS update, the pharmacy board did do a regulatory update and updated their urgent or emergent compounding to reflect that. And so that was updated. It is reflective of that in the current regulations within the pharmacy board. And again, our material was cleared through the pharmacy board before we put this forward. It is accurate in nature as we explained it and we put it out there. And that is it's accurate as how the state of California, the pharmacy board for the state of California interprets this. So it is accurate. I understand that you may have some disagreement with it. I'd be happy to set you up to have some conversations with our pharmacy board as the one that does oversee this directly, because they are the ones that do the pharmacy inspections, the compounding inspections, and outline what is required for documentation around those areas. But I want to make sure that it is very clear that what is presented in our board materials and what I presented today is directly in alignment with the Department of Consumer Affairs and directly in alignment with the California the Board of Pharmacy in the state of California. And they are the ones that dictate the rules and regulations around that. So please understand that if you guys are practicing, anybody is practicing outside of the guidelines that were provided here today, that needs to be addressed and rectified. Thank you.
Dear moderator, are there any other comments?
Olena Swetlab would like to make a comment. 1 second, please.
Good
Olena,
afternoon.
there you go. Go for it.
Thank you. I'm joining from my cell phone. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having this rich discussion and really explaining, Loretta. I really appreciate that true explanation of what's going on and what the alignments are and what we are not aligned with. I've been in critical care for almost 20 years, and in the recent shortage with IV solutions, my nurses and me myself, we were term compound, we were mixing and adding into the solutions in order to ensure our patients are getting their medications and the treatment and the therapy. That definitely the reinforcement of the current law will be an eye-opening for a lot of organizations, not only like IV clinics or anything like that, but specifically for critical care. I wonder if there will be any avenue for discussion. I would love to be a part of it, even maybe in the future path if we're updating the law, anything like that. Again, thank you so much for listening to my comment. Appreciate you.
Yes, thank you with that. About a year ago, I believe the California Nursing Association sent out a flyer to their members on compounding that was accurate. There are large pushes within, critical areas, large hospital associations, and that are really trying to get a compounding pharmacy either in the same unit or available to them in the hospital, so that nurses do not have to be put in a position where that is being asked of them. Part of the messaging that we sent out, or that we will be sending out, actually says that a nurse cannot be delegated this even if a provider says you should compound. And so we really wanted to make sure that that was clear, that even if somebody orders you to compound, you are still not able to do that. That is outside of your scope of practice. And so the real kind of ask at that point is, if you're running into situations like that, that you do need to approach your chain of command and ask for the appropriate assistance that is required, and that is either a physician that would not necessarily be what is practiced, but a compounding pharmacist or a pharmacy available to do that for you would be what is required.
Thank you.
Do you want to read Anonymous's question?
I can. Let me put this out. It says, does this hold true for adding vitamins to IV solutions for in-home infusions? This is exactly what brought this to us. Yes, it absolutely holds true to all of that. That is really kind of the precipitating factor that has caused an increase in issues that are being reported to our board and investigated. Vitamins, supplements, any medication going into a sterile delivery unit is all compounding, and so it cannot occur.
Thank you for your comments. Board President Trujillo, there are no other public requests for comments on the WebEx. Do we have any in-person requests for comments there in BRN HQ?
Yes, we have one request for comment here at HQ.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, Madam Chair and members. I'm actually wearing a different hat today. Monica Miller, representing the California Naturopathic Doctors Association, and appreciate this conversation. We did work very closely with the pharmacy board as they were promulgating those regulations. It was a very painful process. Do you want me to start again? Okay. So anyhow, it was a very painful process. Bless the pharmacies board for putting up with our continued discussions. We appreciated the work. With that said, with all due respect, the naturopathic doctor actually that you cited actually was found she was not the person who was negligent in the death of that patient. It had nothing to do with that. So I just want to make sure I set the record straight on behalf of the naturopathic doctors. We look forward to seeing what comes out from this. We're actually pleased that there is some conversation, because I think everyone has felt that waiting on the BRN to see where they're at, because all the other providers who work in this space definitely feel like this is the BRN space, and so look forward to continuing to work with you on this on behalf of them and others. So.
Thanks very much. Monica, could you, I know we're into the lunch hour, but could you just tell us what was so painful? I mean, what was so difficult about the process? Where were the
Absolutely.
points of conflict?
So obviously I'm not a naturopathic doctor, so I just want to, set the record straight on that. One of the push points was really with regard to glutathione that naturopathic doctors do administer specifically to firefighters. and specifically actually at base camp during fires. For example, the Tubbs fire, the fire in the Palisades, the Eaton fire, those tragic fires that happened recently, we're able to go in as naturopathic doctors. We had a FEMA grant, and we just received a grant from Los Angeles County as well through IHAN, which is an organization, a nonprofit that's been created consisting of naturopathic doctors who go in and are able to administer natural medications and do this through compounding to allow firefighters to not only clear the toxins that they're bringing in at that particular moment during the firefighting, but overall long term. There's studies that show that they have been very effective in clearing a number of the toxins and reducing, risks related to cancer, et cetera. During the discussion, there was the Board of Pharmacy and trying to get them to agree with what the FDA said in terms of the compounding and who can do it and how that works and what can be done. And we did ultimately get some positive outcomes from those discussions, but it was the Board of Pharmacy, literally, we would meet until, and I assumed they would stop at 5 o'clock at night. We would meet until 8 or 9 o'clock at night going through it. They were very gracious in holding subcommittee meetings, which I understand they usually don't have to do. They're not required to do, and they did do that, where a number of both naturopathic doctors and firefighters and others were able to come forward and talk about, the differences. Also, the Veterinarians Association, there were a number of specifically large animal vets that use some compounding medications that they would have been no longer allowed to utilize those in terms of horses for blindness, et cetera. So it just was many hours, a lot of back and forth on tinkering on what language is going to look like, just to make sure we could legitimately utilize those processes. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
So again, just a point of clarification, we may be talking about two different naturopathic doctors that had this occur. The one that I did reference was found guilty on this and did lose the license on it. And so the pharmacy board just messaged me and said, that's not accurate. Please address that. So I did. The other thing that they're kind of asking and saying that this might be helpful is that it says maybe they need to understand that not all medication can be mixed with all solutions, and many medications are not safely mixed together, and so that might be some helpful messaging. They did also send over and share the USP 1.3 immediate use definitions, and it says, when all the following conditions are met, compounding of CSPs for direct and immediate administration is not subject to the requirements for category 1, 2, or 3. The CSPs are the compounding sterile preparations. So CSPs, 1, aseptic techniques, processes, and procedures are followed and written. Standard operating procedures are in place to minimize the potential for contact with non-sterile surfaces, introduction of particulate matter or biologic fluids, and mix-ups with other conventionally manufactured products or CSPs. 2, personnel are trained and demonstrate competency in aseptic processes as they relate to assigned tasks and facilities SOPs. 3, the preparation is performed in accordance with evidence-based information for physical and chemical compatibility of the drug, e.g. approved labeling, stability, and compatibility studies. 4, the preparation involves not more than 3 different sterile products. 5, any unused starting component from a single dose container must be discarded after the preparation is complete. Single dose containers must not be used for more than 1 patient. 6, administration begins within 4 hours following the start of the preparation. If administration has not begun within 4 hours following the start of the preparation, it must be promptly and appropriately and safely discarded. Unless directly administered by the person who prepared it or administration is witnessed by the preparer, the CSP must be labeled with the name and amounts of all active ingredients, the names or initials of the person who prepared the preparation, and the 4-hour time period within the administration must begin. They updated CCR 1736.1 B1, and it says, and that is our regulation to answer the USP update. It says, except as followed in paragraph 2 and 3, CSPs for direct and immediate administration as provided by the USP Chapter 797 shall be compounded in those limited situations where the failure to administer such a CSP could result in loss of life or intense suffering of an identifiable patient. Any such compounding shall be only in such quantity as is necessary to meet the immediate need of the patient. If not already documented in the patient's medical record, documentation for each such CSP shall also include the compounded date and time, the patient's name and patient's unique identifier, and the circumstances causing the immediate need of the patient. Such documentation need be redocumented by the compounding staff if already available. Need not be redocumented, sorry. So those are the ones that we kind of brought forward that I said there is a specific call out that allows for 3 sterile medications to be done specifically to life or limb sparing and must be utilized for that specific patient within the 4-hour time frame. So that's where that comes directly from. So, but just understand that if our pharmacy board, which dictates this, interprets this way, regardless how anybody else wants to interpret it, that is the law, and that is the one that we have to follow and answer to. So hopefully the messaging we put out is very clear and concise. There may be some nuances, and if there is, I definitely recommend you reaching directly out to the Board of Pharmacy for those nuanced items. But please understand that this is something that is really causing alarms to go off in our state, as we are the largest state with the largest number of med spa IV hydration clinics in the nation. And so it is really kind of focused here on us. And then just remember that there is a legislative ask out there from organizations to have this law amended. But at that point, that legislative ask has not gone through. Thank you. If there's no more public comment.
There is Sarani Kwan would like to make a comment. 1 second, please.
Thank you, moderator. This is Sarani here, Kwan. I'm the president-elect for California Association for Nurse Practitioners. Thank you for finally getting my request to comment. I've been working on this particular topic for probably over a decade because I was part of a large healthcare system that had a lot of nurses that wanted to make sure they were following the law. But on behalf of California Association for Nurse Practitioners, we respectfully oppose the board's proposed definition and prohibition on compounding. Specifically, diluting and mixing medications for immediate use is a fundamental nursing skill performed safely every day by nurses and nurse practitioners across a wide range of clinical settings. I myself was trained to mix medications in nursing school here in California. The proposal currently being voted on risks conflating routine medication preparation with pharmacy level compounding, which I completely agree belongs with our pharmacy colleagues. And it creates unnecessary barriers to timely patient care. I'm thinking specifically of bicarb added to lidocaine when we're doing IV starts. That's probably the number one thing that comes up when we are trying to care for patients in clinical settings and keep them comfortable. And that would be considered illegal under current regulations. So I just wanted to make that comment and share that with the team. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Board President Trujillo, there are no other requests for comments on the WebEx. Do you have any more in-person requests for comments there in BRNHQ?
No, we do not.
Thank you. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. We'll take it to a vote. Dolores Trujillo votes yes. Vice President Neelu Patel?
Votes no.
Board Member Jovita Dominguez?
Dominguez, yes.
Board Member Patricia Nguyen?
Nguyen, yes.
Board Member David Lawler?
Lawler, yes.
Board Member Vicki Granowitz?
Granowitz, yes.
Board Member Allison Cormack?
Cormack, yes.
Board Member Katie Nair?
Nair, yes.
Thank you. So at this time, we will break for lunch. and we should return by 2:00 p.m. Thank you.
I just want to make a message out to board staff as well as any IT assistants here that we will be starting back at 2:00. So please have board staff return 15 minutes early so we could do mic and audio and visual checks and get us all going. Thank you.